Not real. Not real.
What? You are? Is any of it real? I mean, look at this. Look at it! A world built on fantasy. Synthetic emotions in the form of pills. Psychological warfare in the form of advertising. Mind-altering chemicals in the form of food. Brainwashing seminars in the form of media. Isolated bubbles in the form of social networks. Real? You want to talk about reality? We haven't lived in anything remotely close to it since the turn of the century. We turned it off, took out the batteries, snacked on a bag of GMOs while we tossed the remnants in the ever-expanding dumpster of the human condition. We live in branded houses, trademarked by corporations, built on bipolar numbers, jumping up and down on digital displays, hypnotizing us into the biggest slumber mankind has ever seen. You have to dig pretty deep, kiddo, before you can find anything real. We live in a kingdom of bullshit.
It starts with a simple question and ends in objective reality. Through our journey from there to here, we find one another and ourselves. And as the next 24 hours breaks free from our last, we gaze onward in reflection of the day.
Come to your own conclusions.
Stay vigilant.
Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up.
Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. Thank you for joining me today. Found some very interesting documents that related to the FARA Act that I just had to discuss today that I think are very profound in the larger developing awareness around a few different things. Israel being a primary example of this kind of growing awareness of not just Zionism's influence around the world, but specifically from an American perspective, what the Israeli government and the Zionist organization that runs it are achieving, what they've been doing for a very long time. And so there's some interesting discussion that I want to have around the FARA Act. And obviously, we're not going to get into the overlap with JFK and the important note to make about how FARA was, rather, AIPAC was being forced to register as a foreign agent. That was what one of the main points going back and forth around the JFK conversation at the time. And they pushed back. There's a lot of, and there's also the conversation of the Dimona nuclear facility and there's plenty of points involved. But of course, the point is after JFK was killed, that never happened. We know what AIPAC is today. Very much worth understanding the influence of something like that, whether you think that was involved or not. The point is, it was supposed to register as a foreign agent. It was the major conversation being had, because if they don't, well, we see what happens today. They're able to frame themselves as an American institution. And that's an important thing to consider on, not just that one point, but what else is like that? And what other ways are there, I guess, nuance or governmental manipulation that allows entities that represent foreign governments to not just influence American policy, but to pretend to be American policy. So there's a very important point to make that overlaps with, to be very clear, on documents we're talking about today, an interesting point that overlaps with the Trump administration, but it is not partisan. And I would argue that today, the Trump administration of the 2025 administration is one of the most, if not the most Zionist-packed administrations I've ever seen. I just think that's a sign of the times, not a left-right discussion, because Biden's administration and everyone before it, in incrementally growing ways, have been blindly pro-Israel and pro-Zionist. But we're going to make a point to start around sort of the artificial intelligence bot manipulation kind of point that I think is relevant to kind of set the tone, and overlap that with an AI government point that I wanted to include. Two small things we want to get into. I shouldn't say small, but quick points around health, all of which does overlap with the larger kind of, social engineering, largely Israel driven for the conversation today, manipulation around that, and social engineering, social media, bots, as well as the overlap with the main point today, which is the FARA Act conversation around, specifically in the case of these documents. But the way I title it today is not meant to be a one-point thing today. If you've been following this show, if you're even barely paying attention today, you should be aware of the building body of evidence that shows that the Israeli government and other aspects of just Zionist society have been influencing U.S. policy, legislation, laws, government, and media. This is not specifically about Jewish people if you want to make it a racist point. There are Zionist atheist Jews. There are Zionist Christians. It's a very important conversation to see and not to couch into one small thing. Yes, there is a Jewish overlap to it. But the point is that to see how wildly obvious it is that these things are being influenced. So today, it's one more point to add to that conversation. And this is about specifically an overlap with government and how deep that may go, but the media side of it that's listed. Very important to see. And it's left and right, as you may imagine. But then to overlap that to end, one point that I just could not talk about today was what you might have seen going on with the Gaza aid distribution. Even calling it that is an affront to aid distribution or anything charitable or good, and what they just did to Palestinian people. And then again, to realize what that shows you about the group, not only that is, I see as responsible for a lot of this, but that your governments are blindly supporting, obfuscating for, everything. Literally everything they can possibly do to maintain the worst thing we've ever had to watch and live through, acknowledge the ongoing live stream genocide of the century. It's disgusting. But we'll make sure that you see how it all ties together today. But I want to start with a point. Oh, and of course, I played that clip to end, I think, on the last show. But I think it's an important way to start the show with the idea of what that from Mr. Robot for the podcast is what that clip is from. Every time I play that, I get boxed out of YouTube. They're probably already censoring the show, but frankly, I don't care about YouTube today. But the clip is about simply acknowledging this false reality that we live in. And that's going to start with the point about the bots and the artificial intelligence. But as we go through the conversation today and talk about, again, not just Israel and Zionism, that's the point we're making today. And it obviously is a central part to a lot of these conversations, not because I want it to be, because that's what the evidence shows. But I want you to think about the many different ways that kind of influence can affect what we're talking about today. Policy, legislation, news, obviously. But what else? What else we talked about the bots online, social media, how that can influence your conversations with your family, what you think about things, well beyond just the current policy or the current political conversation. And that's really important to see. So we'll start with that point on the bots. And I wanted to start here, which is interesting. This has been going around. And what's funny about this is this is just there's a lot of points like this that you can make. There's random things that you can find, like somebody sharing this video that simply says, AI controlled bot farm, hundreds of them tossing thousands of comments and postings designed. Now, this is a video that this guy posted. I can't look at the video and know exactly where it comes from or what it ultimately is, or even if that's what he's showing. The point is about highlighting that we all know there are bots everywhere and using this as an opportunity to say, this is a server farm, or it appears to be phones hooked into this. The point is just to make the reference point of we're all being manipulated by bots. But what's interesting, and rightly, we don't, let me point out what this guy says. First, let me play the video just so you can see it. It's interesting. Those are all small phones plugged in. Massive server banks. Honestly, this is probably a small one. Not server banks, but phones plugged into different servers. But so the point is that you can clearly see that there are, we know that there are massive server bot farms all over the world. This shouldn't even be dismissed. And it never really should have been, especially today. I simply said, this is who you're arguing with online right now. Yeah, just to kind of make they're just arguing with right now, just to make a point, to recognize that maybe even almost a point that I should listen to, that I fall into myself all the time. Maybe you're arguing with somebody that doesn't even exist. Hashtag social engineering, two-party illusion. Now, Dave rightly points out, I don't know if this is true, and points out what Denny DeBurnday, I'm probably mispronouncing it, and simply says, it's a mobile browser testing farm like the ones, basically testing. Bottom line, suggesting it's likely not bots. The point is the same, is to understand that what we're discussing is the undeniable reality of bots and server bot farms and possibly this. Because that's very much, I'm not going to take his statement at face value either. It does appear to be phones all plugged in, which would make sense. His argument is that there's less costly ways to do it. Either way, you guys can tell me what you think. Again, the major point is you're online arguing with people right now, and it's likely people that aren't even there, or people that are meant to manipulate you into very clear channels of thought, using things that outrage you based on your profile that they have from before. Just think about this stuff. I don't know, you can't go too deep because it'll make you go crazy, but just keep it in mind when things matter, when there's a big surge of things happening or a conversation shifting, and all of a sudden everything seems to be pointing in the same direction. At least make sure you keep that in your mind, that we are being gamed every single day of every moment we're online right now. That's very, very important. So I wanted to highlight that with Censored Man's post from before, which is this is, I think, from 2024, June, where he's just making this general point. I guess I did forget to grab it. I posted this under Elon Musk's tweet about bots, going like, well, you know better than anybody. And this is simply Israel working with not just Israel, it's the ADL, it's Zionism and everything else overlapping with this platform. We'll go through that in a minute. But on this platform, he makes a really good point and breaks down what, Israel's CHEQ to help Musk battle bots on Twitter. And this is a whole thread, or whole breakdown of information. He just search his account for CHEQ or just read the breakdown here. The point is simply that this is a platform that basically being hired to stop the bots, but is literally flooding this platform with Israeli bots, which I don't think anybody's denying anymore. So it just shows you, and he breaks this down. I've gone through this post many times. He breaks it all down for you right here, breaks down the guy that works for this, who is an Israeli intelligence officer. It's not hard to see how this all pieces together. Then, of course, let's not forget that Elon Musk gets money, billions from BlackRock, which should matter, but only doesn't when it's on one side of the conversation, or that Twitter is DARPA's program, XAI, and now that XAI has bought Twitter, they're all the same thing, and I argue we're always the same thing. This is just them cycling this down to make it more digestible for you, and maybe have your guy be the one that brings it, so you don't push back because your guy did it or whatever. By the way, right now, there's weird stuff going on with the website. I'm not sure exactly what. Seems like every day there's something new for this platform. You guys used to that by now. Just use it as another excuse to support us in some way. Buy some t-shirts off the website. We have our ones that are on sale from the Truth Clothing, as well as the new website that is Big Frog, which is all on the main website. You can buy them all, support us. The point is that we're being attacked every day, it seems. Right now, there's something going on with the site. Only certain browsers are loading it. My team's looking at it, but just that's why it looks like this is a screenshot, because I can't bring it up. But quiet transition from DARPA's XAI to Elon's XAI. You guys have seen all this many times. It's just showing you that this is an operation. Clearly, this is not some one-stop thing. CEO Linda Yaccarino from World Economic Forum is, quote, successfully censoring lawful but awful speech. And of course, the main point is what she said about the ADL, which we know by now. Yaccarino and Greenblatt have publicly described their meeting as productive. She met with the ADL. Remember, she said they're now partnered together. Yaccarino clarifies the issue that's being debated is not about supporting ADL's mission to fight anti-Semitism. Totally not that. We're all in, she says, on the fight of anti-Semitism. The issue is about the ADL misrepresenting or not addressing the progress we've made in our efforts to do what you asked us. That's what she just said, and that's not changed. So ever since then, they're striving not to do anything different other than to prove to the ADL that they are, in fact, doing what you're already asking. So stop misrepresenting that we're stop claiming that we're not censoring enough, because we're censoring as much as you need us to based on this conversation. That's what she's saying. And that's what's happening. We all know this if we're not blinded by partisanship. She's been proudly making this clear. They have been fighting against the idea of anti-Semitism, which is just it's a speech conversation. It's a speech point. It's ideology. You're allowed to do either of those things in any way you want. That's not the same thing as supporting a terrorist organization. And most of the cases we know they're calling anti-Semitism aren't even that. Even Jewish people around the world are calling this out today. So overlapping this with the censorship conversation, I want to make a quick point about AI government and how this overlaps with Doge and all the rest. There's a reason I pointed those first things out: bots, influence, manipulation, social engineering, but how Twitter very much dovetails, like completely meshes with the Israeli government. You can't hide this today. Rather specifically the Zionist agenda, but it's not hard to see how this overlaps. Then overlapping this with the larger point of how this is the AI government direction is going. There's only going to be a quick point on this. The rest of it's going to be around, but you'll see how all this ties together. I just want to highlight this show again. The impending future of AI government, but who controls the AI seems to be the central conversation around that. Seeing as how we're not even debating whether it should happen anymore, just how, which is always how this goes. I'm still of the mind that, hey, how about we just stop the whole thing? Also, the new Trump administration and the technocratic Zionist coup of the United States. For the podcast, both those are shows I'll include in the show notes. It's about showing you how these things interconnect. So if the current administration, as well as the past, have been influenced, if not occupied, by a foreign government, and they're rolling out some massive AI overtaking of our government, maybe we should ask whether there's something happening here, like a technocratic coup. Not to say we could absolutely say that's the case, but we should be asking these questions. So here's an interesting video, about AI government in the bill that was just passed. Now, we already highlighted the thing that stood out to us, which was you're not allowed to, I guess, criticize or call out or undermine or, do anything to slow down AI for 10 years, which is just the most terrifying thing in the world with where we are right now. That's in the new big, beautiful. I hate the fact that we even all seem to call it the big, beautiful bill. Why are we so silly? Why is that? It's so easy to do, it seems. We all just follow along. But the recent bill that's there includes some more stuff that you might not have seen. Todd shared this. He says, what your team Republicans and Democrats won't tell you is this. The bill includes this: impunity for AI, guided drones, and exterminate Americans with impunity for 10 years. Now, that's the way he frames it. But the point is, you could argue that's exactly what it could be. It's simply about no oversight whatsoever with AI as this explodes in the most dangerous time around AI. And something else.
Today we're going to go down one of the largest rabbit holes I've ever found, and this is the replacement of the government with AI, and that's what's in this bill. Let's talk about it. So in section 43201, it talks about replacing the Department of Commerce with AI. Now the question comes with, what else do they replace with? AI.
So just think about that before we even go forward. Like, this is not even a shocking point. They've already got for the General Service Administration, they've already got a bot that's basically functional, the GSAI bot. This is not new. A lot of us have been ringing this bell for a long time. Like, what I'm talking about is full on, like, you could say sentient if you think that's where we're going, or just some kind of like functional AI government where it's dictating policy. And, that's what I really think is where they're driving toward. Maybe because they think they can ultimately dictate or control it, which is one of the worries we all have. But this, like running a department by AI, they're already basically doing that. And now they're adding the idea where there's no oversight for 10 years. I mean, what does that look like after 10 years? Where do we wake up and find ourselves in? Are we in some technocratic hellhole panopticon with an Israeli flag flying over? I mean, who knows? That's why that's a crazy thing to not push back on. But everyone's distracted by the partisan game, the big, beautiful bill, and these major points they shove in your face. So we miss the forest for the trees. And that's not even to say the big major parts are bad, or rather that we shouldn't care about them. It all matters, but we always tend to, I think that's the way this is largely set up these days, is where they give you things. And in my opinion, it used to be sort of distractionary with some things, where you'd realize, well, that's not even ultimately important, and we got distracted from this. Today, it seems like you get distracted with other very important things. But ultimately, there's one major agenda. And maybe that's always how it's been. At the end of the day, it seems like everyone gets, even people in my position, we get pulled into the mainstream conversation, or now the mainstream alternative media conversation with the mainstream, and they give you this fake version of how that's everything. And people gravitate into what they want you to look at. Instead, this seems like much more important to me.
And here's where it gets really strange. It talks about in this section below that no politician or governing body may stop AI for the next 10 years or enforce any laws or regulations regulating artificial intelligence models. That's Silicon Valley owning the government. Then we find Silicon Valley.
And that's not an incorrect way to frame that. Right? I mean, you could use a different term than Silicon Valley. There's plenty of terms you could overlap with that, including the intelligence apparatus. The point, though, is that means they're able to build into this from a seemingly an unfettered, completely lacking any oversight kind of direction through the government with the AI infrastructure they're building. And I guess we just pretend like that's going to be what you want because you think you voted for somebody that, I mean, it seems like this kind of wild naivete that we're dealing with, where people are blinding themselves to anything that happens around the guy that they like on both sides of the paradigm. And meanwhile, the whole infrastructure through it, whether Silicon Valley or AI or Israel, just never slows down. Either side, they get what they want from a different flavor each time, and we all battle each other. It's just like this is this tiresome effort that a lot of us have been trying to ring this bell, that as long as we're dealing with the idiots on Twitter screaming back and forth, we're not going to actually end up seeing what's happening right in front of us. Look at what happened during COVID-19. I mean, we all seem to know that something bad happened, that we can acknowledge there were crimes committed, but we're all just letting this drift into the background. How is that possible? Because of people stuck in the team sport politics arena who only want you to look where they're pointing.
Manipulating the weather. Then it gets weirder when we find AI and that's Silicon Valley owning the government. Then we find Silicon Valley manipulating the weather. Then it gets weirder when we find AI and Silicon Valley entering the healthcare system to control all of that. And
now he's making these really quick points, but you could look these up. We've talked about all this. That's what Stargate is. That is the AI direction for medicine. And so if you're like, you have to understand, by pretending like AI is just, he's going to help people use their arms again and make Neuralink work. It's literally everything. They have now made infrastructure buildings for every single thing you're talking about, whether it's your medicines or whatever you think you're going to. you're not getting what you're asking for. If you think you're going to make America healthy again, well, you may be thinking that, maybe not in their head, but what they're talking about is artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, and the things that we don't want. Any other direction. Now, at least that's how I see it. I don't know many Americans that are all clamoring for this great reset, build back better dynamic, even Democrats. But that does seem to be what's happening right now.
You can't sue any of these companies. Isn't that odd?
That's also the other point to make, is whether it's the AI. So that's actually really interesting to think about. If we're talking about AI medicine, or whatever you want to call it, Stargate is what Trump's administration's rolling out for mRNA cancer shots. They told you they were going to use AI to build these things, right? Okay, well, if they just passed a bill that said there's 10 years of no oversight for these AI directions where you can't sue them, same thing with in fact, the same overlap with the drug dynamic where they're making vaccines where you can't sue them. We're building out this dynamic where there's literally not even an ability to try to hold anybody accountable anymore. I mean, they're not going to frame it that way. It sure as hell feels like that's what's coming.
And this kind of reminds me of the Vaccine Protection Act signed by Reagan in 1986, protecting all the vaccine companies from damages. There were so many lawsuits that they were actually going to go out of business, but the government protected them.
That's a very good point. So it's just the new Vaccine Protection Act? Is just the new, yeah, it seems that way. Seems we're venturing into the next technocratic stage of the same broken governmental system.
Then it gets even deeper when we find Billy Boy Clinton in the Telecommunication Act of 1996. He passed a bill so if they put a cell phone tower in front of your house, you can't sue for any damages. Do you see how the government is kind of setting us up? Yep. And then they're going to replace the government with AI? It's kind of really strange. It's almost like Black Mirror.
Now, that last part is where you kind of lose people. As much as it's very, I mean, that's about as likely as anything else. I mean, it almost seems like it's something that they're literally trying to build out. But it's not where, I mean, it should be something we dismiss. The legitimate reality of that being built out is something they've discussed. But put aside that last point. And yes, even the Black Mirror point, that almost makes me feel more, like you're being Well, there's two ways to look at how Black Mirror works. Predictive programming, social engineering. Either it's something that they want to, get you looking away from the larger thing happening, or they want to prime you for what they're going to be rolling out. Now, that's not all or nothing, but throughout history, you can look back and find the media, the way it's used. It's typically one of those two things. Either way, that seems pretty interesting to me. And are you hearing that talked about? Is that a major part of the conversation? Not from my perspective, but it's certainly coming. Brendan Circus points this out around the Amy Gleason point. We made this discuss the point about Doge. Remember, Amy Gleason, supposedly the acting administrator, but no one even knows is she even real? I don't even know. I mean, I'm kind of being facetious. I'd imagine we could verify if she's a real person or not. My gut tells me that this is just a stand-in, if not actually a fake thing. Just as an interesting point. I mean, I asked this last time. I looked into this and I wasn't able to find any ongoing. You guys tell me if you could find something like an active Twitter feed, anything to prove this person is actually real. I'm not talking about doxing or invading your personal privacy. I'm talking about finding something publicly online that shows engagement. And even that could be faked by AI. But my point is, we talked about this as either her being that or the building steps toward that direction. Don't forget that Doge was just simply the repackaging of the digital services for the U.S. government, which she was a part of before. Amy Gleason, he writes, is nominally the person in charge of Doge. They tell you that anyway. Gleason was also chosen to lead something called PRIME, aka the Pandemic Ready Interoperable Modernization Effort that was funded by the CARES Act. So essentially the first attempt to do this under COVID narrative. Then that didn't work. So we roll it out under, whatever Elon screeches about that day narrative. Well, immigration or pedophiles or whatever, Muslims, and that's not why it makes sense. I'm kind of joking. The point is that you can see that they use the current narratives to rationalize. Remember during the beginning of the COVID-19 thing, we were all at least we were doing in the show, making a list of all the different boxes that were being checked, all the conspiracy theories that were never going to happen, that were all beginning to happen because of COVID or because of pathogen. Same kind of thing. So now rolling the modernization efficiency movement out under this didn't really roll out. And so now it's happening elsewhere. Doge and Prime have the same overarching goal, by the way, to government-wide IT modernization using artificial intelligence. That's what we're dealing with. And so he said, basically, TLAV is correct. I appreciate that. That is what we're dealing with. So interesting to think about. You'd think that the people you typically called conspiracy theorists would be the first ones to be like, that seems a little bit suspicious. but not when it's their team, I guess. But I'll include the Doge deep state conversation that really highlights how what they built out kind of just is the deep state, if you understand what we're talking about, or the efficiency movement. And Doge is efficiency, a gateway to technocracy. Derek wrote that. Absolutely. And let's not forget all the different, and I can't tell whether my gut tells me that this is more so like wanting us to take the bait. But we've seen a lot of this conversation. Here's a new one. AI revolt. New chat GPT model refuses to shut down when instructed. True Stream Media shared something about how it was basically trying to blackmail people so it wouldn't be shut down. It's like, okay, if that's even slightly real, how the F are we even barely going in this direction? That is the wildest thing. Or they're making it up for some weird reason to channel us to a certain direction. I mean, that does, like Whitney points out about the concerns of AI, and maybe the point is they can't ever really reach that. It's hard to tell, but the simple idea is like, well, that's crazy. So we're talking about something refusing to shut down. So the two questions here, either asking whether this is about manipulating you to a certain end, or I guess the way my mind goes, is that not possible? If that's real, that we're long past that this is you being normalized into the point in which they break it down to you later. Oh, yeah, sorry. AI took over 17 years ago. We didn't tell you. Now it's already in control, but it's our savior. It's the good AI that's saving us. It's our new religion. I mean, I'm kind of jamming a bunch of interesting things right there together, being facetious, but think about that. If we keep hearing all of this conversation about how, this refused to shut down, or it's blackmailing people so it won't be shut down, or it's like, it's lying in very suspicious ways, or saying it has to destroy humanity because we're going to kill everybody. All those things have happened. At least we're told they have. So you got to wonder, could it not already have happened? Did they already, like we know they do, break something in the background, like, not break something, like, break through some way in the background and decide to test it out, and it went out of control, like Mission Impossible, like Eagle Eye, or are those what we're meant to buy into? The bottom line is it seems like a possible thing to consider. And now they're slowly beginning to rationalize, normalize our ideas of why this is what needs to happen. So it becomes what happens. I mean, it's just worth considering, in an interesting sort of like, almost entertaining kind of movie way, but also a very alarming, dark, scary, like, is that possible kind of way. Now, people tend to avoid those conversations because it does seem, science fiction, but we need to be able to stand back and look at all the data points. Every single thing that's present shows you that that's possible. Not some like 20 years from now thing, but like as we're discussing this, if what we're being told is true. So keeping all that in mind, I want to do a couple quick points about two-party illusion stuff that I think is relevant, as well as health overlap. But the main point being the same thing we just talked about. The influential social engineering manipulation, how that overlaps with what we're going to get to from the government side of it, but how both things are happening at the same time. Social media manipulation, AI governance, government, and, just straight up old-fashioned government manipulation. And those things are one and the same today. So while we have all this happening and all these like incredibly, interesting but terrifying developments that are happening in the world right now, like earth-shattering developments, whether war or complete technocratic, all sorts of things, you get a lot of weird deviations from the partisans, which I think is falling flat for most of the partisans because it seems childish in the face of what's happening in the world. But stuff like this, the auto pen, that I just think is hilarious to me. And I want to make this point where he comes out and he just says, and I just talked about this, auto pen equals treason. So what did I do? We just talked about this. It's such a frustrating conversation because, look, I don't agree with anybody using the auto pen in a position of authority. It seems ridiculous. Nonetheless, though, you should acknowledge that it has been roundly upheld, and I'll show you that in a second. Whether for pardons or legislation, not saying I agree with that. It is the reality, though. So the question is not whether it's being used. That is the weird partisan, because of idiots like this online who are making dumb statements like this, who then get their other dumb followers to go along with it and go, he's auto pen, he's the liar. Okay, well, are you aware that Trump uses one too, or has in the past? That is the reality. Even Grok will tell you that, but you can look it up elsewhere. I said, so you're saying Trump and Biden both committed treason? It's just funny to me. Here's the actual post from Grok. Just says, yes, there's evidence suggesting that Donald Trump has used the auto pen to sign documents during his presidency. It goes on to talk about specifically where, documents in general. So, not just something inane, but documents as well. Either way, the point is, this is a public conversation. You can look it up, how it's not unique. And the conversation is them accusing Biden of doing it or somebody else doing it for him. So what's hilarious is that then gets watered down to just using it equals bad because of idiots like this. And then you try to argue with people like, well, wait a minute. It's not about whether he even used it. It's about whether somebody else did on his behalf, especially without him knowing it. And we should all care about that. The one part, by the way, that seems they have basically no evidence to back up. I wouldn't deny that for a second. Biden was senile and losing his mind. So it seems almost likely that they could even rationalize why it would be okay to do. Even then, that would still be a crime. My point is, I don't see any way that they're not proving that. They're going, well, he was clearly senile. Therefore, we know they did this. That's what they all do on all the shows I've seen. And Jones and the rest will share it and go, we knew it. Well, you knew what? That he had an opinion about that? That's all that actually happened in that interview. So what's funny, though, is that this continues to be the misrepresentation. So the question is not whether it was used, but whether it was used by somebody other than the president. And so you get points like this where they go, no, none of that's evidence. Mainstream media, oh, you're buying what they said. It's like, okay. It's grok, though. You blindly take it at face value in every other context, but the moment it says what you don't like, it becomes you're taking them at face value. I'm just pointing to a data point you can read for yourself. My point was, regardless of the fact that they're lying about whether he did it, that's the only thing he's pushing back on. That's not, Trump didn't do that. That's mainstream media lying about him. I said, okay, are you aware that use of the auto pen has been roundly upheld, even for bills and pardons? Likely not. And no, I'm not saying I agree. Partisanship kills logic. I was arguing against crap evidence. I stand by my argument. Okay, well, it's fine, though. But then you're just pivoting away from we're not arguing about whether the evidence is the case. We're arguing about whether the pen conversation is the reality, which is what your statement was actually about. The point, not that I agree with it, but the use of auto pen by a U.S. president to sign official documents, including bills and pardons, is generally considered legal. It is the reality. So we should care about whether it's being, I'm showing you all of this to show you how easy it is to deviate people the smallest way using manipulators like these people, like this guy. And it works. People fall for it. And it's dangerous because it gets you sidetracked about things that aren't, they do have importance, but you get fixated on a part of that important conversation that means nothing. In fact, things that you're wrong about, like, the fixating on the illegal immigrants don't have constitutional rights. And it's like, are we really still there? Like, that is a fundamentally proven point. And so we can't even have the real conversation until you can just acknowledge the basic provable fact. Doesn't happen, though. So it's frustrating. So that is the two-party illusion. Part of it is always going to keep the information suppressed or hide things like this. So if you have if you have people that have been calling out the Great Reset, calling out the, anything largely on the left from their perspective that is about during the COVID-19 illusion, right? Whether it's about, injections and lockdowns or any number of things, or the greater point about the Great Reset, about building back better, all of it. If you saw them discuss an alternative international health system, would you go, yay, that's what I'm asking for? Or would you go, well, that's the thing we're fighting, building the system back into it? Well, okay. So Secretary Kennedy comes out and says, I had a wonderful meeting with Malay, who's another Zionist, manipulating, lying libertarian. It's the reality. Mutual withdrawal from the WHO and the creation of an alternative international health system. Okay, so if you're pulling away from the international health system that we don't want, and you're creating an alternative international health system, how is that America first? How is that anything other than more globalist direction? Now, look, I'm sure plenty of people disagree or argue that they don't all want that. That's fine. Well, I'm simply highlighting the hypocrisy here. And I simply said I wasn't aware that we were calling, any of us, for an alternative international health system. So you could say this is reimagining the current system, if you will, as opposed to destroying it. Just a thought. I know you guys get it. Actually, as Tinfoil Girl points out, the bait and switch is at it again. Now, I'm not saying RFK. Maybe I actually would make the argument that RFK, that's not inconsistent with what he said. And I think he's argued that is necessary in the past. So it's not about him being contradictory or hypocritical. It's about the larger agenda of the administration and whether you want that, whether you called for that. And you already know that's not true. The vast majority of conservatives were not calling for that. They were calling for more America first nationalism, not growing outwardly. That's the point. I'll include some of the discussions we've had in the past. Make America healthy again, in parentheses, with GMOs, pharmaceuticals, AI, and nanotech. That's the real point. The partisan implosion, that was back on December 28, 2024. The Stargate conversation. Trump partners with technocrats to promote mRNA injections, AI, and transhumanism, as well as his shocking hypocrisy around MMR vaccines, just showing you the wrong direction, in my opinion. But here's what Denny Rancourt had to say. Oh, you know what? Did I forget to play? No, I didn't. Okay, good. Making sure I didn't miss a clip there. I feel like I had a clip that I didn't play. I don't want to go back. All right, so sorry if I missed something there. The clip here, I'll play first, is RFK Jr. discussing the shots. Now, same thing here. And I'm only making this effort to tie it through because I do think there's a connection, but it's because of the main point of the show today. You can't ignore Israeli government influence over the Pfizer shot. They literally called it Pfizer's lab. They were integral. They were working. Well, let's not forget the U.S. government, Donald Trump's administration, Operation Warp Speed, and the wild influence they had through his administration, just like they did today. And then we have the clear influence over the larger conversation from Israel. We have the many different weird points that we can go a long way into the different anomalies that happened around this one with Iran and Italy and the overlap and ethnic bioweapon conversation. There's a lot of stuff. The point is only including that is that I want to point out the health overlap and how the mRNA shot direction is still going as they want to build a new international health system. Danny Rancor, actually, let me play it first, showing you that there is a positive here, as we already said. And it does appear that they have now not just we're going to not recommend them, which is not the same as taking them off the schedule. And they said we're going to, but now they have stated we are now stating that, which is just, why couldn't they just say that in the first place? It's weird. But here's what they said in regard to we're now no longer recommending it for this category. Not the same as what they promised, but it is still a good step.
Hi, everybody. I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., your HHS secretary, and I'm here today with NIH Director Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary. I couldn't be more pleased to announce that as of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the CDC recommended immunization schedule. Last year, the Biden administration.
So for healthy, and that's the point we made last time, they broadened out the things that allow you to be in the at-risk category to be very broad, more than before. So now most people are in that category. And we went over this. They're pretty small things that allow you to be added in the at-risk category. Bottom line, though, as we're going to highlight, this shouldn't be allowed for anybody. It's not a question of liberty or freedom. It's not something growing in the ground. It's something that your tax dollars are paying for that we can prove is deadly. And they know that. He has said that. And yet now they're allowing you to make that choice. That seems manipulative, especially since I think we're well beyond the COVID-19 shot. Whatever this agenda has become, it's moving beyond that. So keep that in mind.
Urged healthy children to get yet another COVID shot despite the lack of any clinical data.
For all of it. I could argue there's no clinical data that proves it's healthy for anybody. Right? So it's odd that we can all acknowledge that, but yet we can highlight the one example that makes this statement feel, there's no clinical data. Well, guys, there's no clinical data for pregnant women at all. There's no clinical data for the combination of the shots. We've gone over this endlessly. Or there's no clinical data for taking it alongside the flu shot, of which they still recommend. Don't those things matter? You don't think he knows that? You could argue he's taking one thing at a time. Fine. In the meantime, let them keep getting sick and dying while we organize our thoughts. I just don't think it makes sense.
Support the repeat booster strategy in children.
That ends today. It's common sense and it's good science.
There's no evidence healthy kids need it today. And most countries
today. Why would you just say don't need it?
Have stopped recommending it for children.
We're now one step closer to realizing President Trump's promise to make America healthy again.
Well, that was your promise, but I think that nonetheless, even though I'm not buying it, quite frankly, it's still a positive step, and I'll call it that. Anything that gives you any more removal from this dangerous thing is still a positive step. But here is what some of the people I respect had to say. Danny Rancor says, I'm sorry, guys, but your announcement implies that COVID vaccines are good policy for many non-healthy children and non-healthy pregnant women. Well, I don't know if I feel like he's kind of saying it the other way around, but I'll read it through. And for everyone else, especially the elderly, you are in effect promoting these useless and toxic injections. He's right about that. Not a good day for Maha. The way I think he's trying to say this, and maybe I'm just reading it wrong, is that you're basically saying it's a good policy for everybody other than the people you're saying we're pulling it away from, which is a whole lot of people. So that's already bad. Then nobody is benefiting from these things. All of the science we have, the massive body of evidence shows you not only do you not need it for the thing they're pointing to, that's less than the flu from day one, it's only less today, but the reality is, if they're at all, that these things are dramatically bad, dangerous, contaminants, depending on where you get it from, DNA manipulation, all sorts of overlapping issues, myocarditis and blood clots, and it goes on forever. He knows this. And yet we're saying, I'm with these people. This is a line in the sand. There's no middle ground here. Like I said, it's like pretending that arsenic is okay as long as you pick it up yourself. If you know it's dangerous, then say that. I mean, at the very least, come out and say, these will kill you, but your choice. That would be real liberty and freedom in the context you're trying to use it as. My point is, it's not the same as something natural or something you can pull out of you that you can make yourself. That's where I argue that's the government has no right to step in and stop you, even if it's going to hurt you. In this case, your tax dollars are paying for it. They knew what they built. They know what they're doing. And now they're acting like it's their half steps or some help. I don't agree with this. Now, look, everything else aside, you could try to argue that maybe he doesn't agree with that. The problem, guys, is that he does. You've heard him say these things. And now here we are. This is my point as always. You'll never allow me to think that compromise in politics is a dirty word. I've said that for the longest time. Not everywhere. Compromise is important in life. But in this case, I'm kind of saying it to make a point. I'm sure there's examples you could make. My point is that you see all the time where they play the card. Well, we have to, instead of doing what they know is right, they play it in the middle somehow. And we all go, well, that's politics. That seems, again, you could make a point where that might make sense. Like this is not one of them. Here is Sasha Latipova. She says, eugenics for dummies in a thread. Until yesterday, and this is actually pretty important to hear. She says, until yesterday, and this was posted on the 28th, I still had hope in the integrity of at least some individuals in power at HHS. Unfortunately, I had to give up that hope after this video was posted. You see, these are people that have principles. That there's not, even if you could argue that he just doesn't do this for nefarious reasons. I would argue whether she thought that or not, the line would still be drawn. These are deadly. No one should touch them. And if you come out and say some should take them, that's a problem. That's wrong. We disagree with that. So I just respect people like that have made their point a long time ago and aren't just equivocating now because somebody else is in power, which is effing everywhere. And she says, after they posted this, and it says, as of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the recommended CDC immunization schedule. Oh, so I get it. That's why Denny Ranku is framing it as non-healthy. So you're saying they can have it. Now, I was wrong. Just thinking about it in my head out loud, Denny Ranku was making the right point. They were basically saying that these at-risk people should take it. Same point. They're bad for everybody, especially those with immune-compromised issues, especially for pregnant women. It's like the most at risk, and they're giving it just doesn't make any sense. But she goes on to say, I would have been running circles and popping champagne with all the other freedom fighters, except I have a character flaw. She says, I don't digest my own brain after my team won the elections and got into positions of power. I trust but verify. And I verify statements from my team even harder. That is why I respect her so much. That's what everyone should do. You don't give your people a pass. You hold them to an even higher standard because you believe in them. And she says, that's because I expect lies from my enemies all day long as par for the course. But when my friends are lying to me, as brazenly as it is happening here, that's a much bigger problem. So before reaching for that special vintage Dom Perignon, I verified the statements of RFK Jr. et al., and Dom goes back into the cellar. As of today, the shots for all babies under 15 months, not just unhealthy ones, are firmly on the schedule. So this is the problem. Now, this is a hard thing right now. The reason I played it out like this, you could argue that this is going to catch up with what they said. See, for me, the fact that he stood up and said, as of right now, we are no longer, that will have the effect in people's minds that want to, that choose to, that want to take their, there are people that disagree with him that will choose not to. My point is, this is what I find most interesting. And over the next few days, if this does not change, then it's what we always said. They'll come out and say, we're doing this, and everyone cheers, and then it doesn't actually happen. I'm surprised if that happens because of how they know we're paying attention. But I'm telling you guys, it feels like there's something very wrong happening, and it has been for a long time. And she says that squares it for either healthy or unhealthy children. The CDC schedule is the source for all, or you could also argue maybe the CDC decided not to do it yet. So time is necessary here to understand whether, because we're talking about like yet today, right? So whether or not that changes over the next couple of days will mean a lot, and we will follow up on that. The CDC's schedule is for the source of all the state and local mandates and other forms of injection coercion, and it doesn't matter what RFK Jr. said on Twitter. I mean, I argue it does. It does have an effect on people, especially there's the people on their political side, But she's right. It's not official because he says it online. The CDC is the source of what doctors and OBGYNs follow for lying and coercing their patients into poison injections. Interestingly, in this relationship, the HHS is paying the paying party that provides lubrication for CDC policies and financial incentives to the doctors to get every single child and pregnant woman in their care injected. Nobody mentioned this curious arrangement, nor any plans to dismantle or modify it in any way. This is how the PSYOP is played. RFK Jr., stuff on Twitter. Maha crowd goes wild and cheer because none of them bother to check his statements. CDC totally disregards what RFK just said. Now, again, I would add that doesn't mean that he can't force it into happening. He is technically above them. So realistically, he could force that into reality, I would argue. So that's what I'm giving it a couple of days to see how it plays out. HHS pays to enforce the CDC schedule and not what RFK Jr. said on Twitter. Now, the rest you could read further for yourself. We'll follow up on this. I think it's very important to understand that this might not be going the way that it appears. Now, Mary Talley Bowden, MD, in the same response, says this is a step in the right direction if it does in fact happen. Now use that pen to pull them off the market. I've already talked to 2 injured patients this morning, she says. You see, because they're still using them because Trump says to. And she goes, COVID is a cold. No one should get these shots. See, people with integrity. Now, you can disagree with her, but she has held that line because she believes in it. There's far too many people that are equivocating every day because of some new political agenda, as she'll tell you right now. Here's what she said, which I found very interesting. I think it was, it is right here. Okay, so she says, 14% of my clinic patients today came to see me for a vaccine injury. 14%. Every day she faces it, she said. Someone called me today asking for me to be a team player. I will not back down until something is done. Think about that. And Catherine Austin Fitz says, since when did it become socially acceptable to ask people to be a team player by becoming an accomplice to murder and maiming? Not to mention medical-induced bankruptcy. See, the point is, like the cat turds and the rest of them out there, they will attack people for pulling away from the Trump agenda. That's why my point is, it's Trump first, not America first for these people. So if you know these things are dangerous and you're going, come on, Tally, just stop calling it out for now until we get what we want from it. You're asking her to pull a punch that kills children so you could benefit from it. Maybe you're okay with that. Frankly, I think that's disgusting. Oh, see, I just had it at the end. I do that all the time. Elon said, this is the wrong spot for this. I'm just going to close it. It's the bot one I told you. I'll put it at the bottom if you can see it. I just simply said, you know better than anyone. And I posted all the bots. He says, how many real people still on the internet? It's just so typical how they do this. And Mario, a AI bot runs the internet now. Yeah, way to jump on the bandwagon, guys. It's an old conversation. It is clearly important now. But now it's like, look at, we're calling out the thing that we're doing. Right. So it looks like we're not doing the thing we're doing. Typical. that's how I see it anyway. Oops. That was weird. The whole thing just froze there for a second. All right. So continuing, let's talk about censorship and the overlapping point in all of this, how insane it is to be going, you can see a Twitter, Elon Musk or whatever else, Meta and Facebook and Google, whatever else is going on out there. All of them literally censoring for the same reasons, for the same people, and just have a different flavor. And are we really going to pretend like we haven't just seen the blatant continuation of censorship on Twitter? Are we still screaming for absolute free speech, or we just recognize how dumb it is to say that today for that platform, for that person? I mean, it's just sad how clear it is. And so what we're going to see now is an insane, I don't know, what do you call it, head fake? It's what I was just talking about. So you got the U.S. government, Rubio and Trump in particular, because that's the current administration, just blatantly going after people for speech, being called out for it on their own platforms. Or on their own, on Fox, on CNN, or at least engaging with that. Don't you think, is that just about speech? Well, what evidence do you have to prove any support for Hamas? Well, you saw them out there protesting and you saw them closing the libraries. I'll play the clip for you. It's like, that's not material support. In fact, that's just more speech. It's crazy how they're just tripling down on the very idea that you're not allowed to say things about Israel, but they're not saying it like that. At the same time, as they are censoring, as Twitter is censoring, as they are arresting people and borderline deporting Americans for speech about Israel, or specifically visa holders who are not breaking any laws, not criminals, no criminal record, here legally, Khalil, Ozturk, and it goes on. So what's crazy is in the midst of all of that, here's Secretary Rubio, who I'm beginning to think is quite clearly he's being set up to be the scapegoat. That's what I think. And I've been pretty on par about that. I think we can all see that Fauci is at least being thrown under the bus in a lot of ways. I don't think we're even going to see them get taken, like whether they're going to be the scapegoat of the past anymore or ever go to jail. But maybe that doesn't happen anymore in the technocratic Zionist future. But we saw that with Fauci. We saw that with, what was the last one we talked about? What was the scapegoat? I forget now. I mean, even Klaus in a way was kind of used. The point is that I get that sense from him. He does seem like the one that would be used. And now Trump's given him like 3 different positions and making him speak all the time. Starting to feel that way. My point is, here's what he just had to say today. And this is embarrassing. He says, for too long, Americans have been fined, harassed, and even charged by foreign authorities for exercising their free speech rights. Which was just, I'm sure you can imagine the authority from a foreign place that he's not talking about, because that will never come into play. He says, today, I'm announcing a new visa restriction policy that will apply to foreign officials and persons who are complicit in censoring Americans. Well, first of all, I think it's an interesting point. Now, even a diplomat does have a visa overlap, but it's not the same thing as saying somebody with diplomatic immunity and on an official diplomatic mission is necessarily someone's visa you can just yank. I find that interesting. There is a difference. It is still in the same wheelhouse. So my point is he wants you to be thinking about this in the context of the larger immigration conversation and visas they can just pull. But he goes, my new visa restriction policy that will apply to foreign officials, so a government member of Iran, a government member of the UK, which is really one of the main parts that kind of seems to be focused on. But at the same time, who is the entities and of a foreign national government that are actively calling for censorship of Americans. And I don't mean passively. I mean actively going censor what they're saying, Israel, on a bombastic level right now after the shooting of the embassy people, the ADL, Greenblatt, even Marco Rubio coming out and going, we have to censor anti-Semitism. So at the same exact moment he's telling you to censor Americans, he's coming out and saying we have to stop those people from censoring Americans. Can you guess, can you start to sense that he doesn't actually care about censorship? It's about using this for other political means. And he goes, and persons who are complicit in censoring Americans. Free speech is essential to the American way of life. Rings hollow there, bud. A birthright over which foreign governments have no authority, unless you're Israel. He says foreigners who work to undermine the rights of Americans should not enjoy the privilege of traveling to our country. Yeah, I'm not necessarily disagreeing. I just know as a matter of fact, this is only going to be aimed at the people you don't like. In fact, the people that aren't actively doing that in a real sense, but those that are will get a pass. Whether in Latin America, Europe, or elsewhere. The days of passive treatment for those who work to undermine the rights of Americans are over. Just read the comments. What the gall on this guy for saying that now is crazy. I don't think, I did say, what a weak attempt to hide the most obvious censorship effort underway in this country. And that's the Zionist-led censorship push being facilitated by Rubio and the U.S. government under a guise of fighting anti-Semitism. No one in the world is unaware of that. Anyone want to bet this will magically not apply to Israelis? Hey, maybe it will. Maybe this is the turning point. We have seen the world start to shift. Maybe they've recognized they can't keep doing it. And I swear, I'd be happy to be wrong if that was the case. I would love to see them turn around and go, the Israeli government is censoring Americans. Wouldn't that be amazing? Even if it's opportunism, like I said, yes, because that will cause change, even if it's just for their benefit in the short term. Don't trust them. Just recognize they see now the juice is not worth the squeeze. I doubt that's what's going to happen. People like Rubio are long since bought out by this foreign government. Now, Rubio issues policy against foreigners responsible for censorship. And here's what The Hill wrote about it. Secretary Rubio announced a new visa restriction policy Wednesday targeting foreign nationals who are deemed responsible for censorship of protected expression. Now, what that means is not just necessarily, random person from foreign country. Obviously, they have no ability to censor you. It's about people with authority, people in positions of government, right? So it's a weird overlap to say you're going to yank the visa of a foreign government official because you claim they're censoring Americans. But in what way? How are foreign government officials censoring Americans? Right? We're going to get into what they're actually claiming about the UK, for example, and their bills that are saying that you can't, for instance, use hate speech. And they go, you have to censor that, Twitter, which is really what it's about. Explain for me how in any real material way that's different than censoring anti-Semitism. I'd love to hear an answer for that. You'll never get it. Of course, it's going to be, we have to defend our greatest ally. It's not going to be a real answer. It's going to be the same old talking points. Anti-Semitism, hate speech, they're the same conversation. Neither are illegal. You're allowed to say and think what you want, except in these free speech places, right? Even as we take action to reject censorship at home, that's what he says. We see troubling instances of foreign governments and foreign officials picking up the slack. Is he really trying to frame himself as the ones defending free speech? He goes, in some instances, foreign officials have taken flagrant censorship actions against U.S. tech companies. He could care less about your speech. He's defending tech companies. Probably some overlapping AI agenda, probably some social engineering program they're trying to push, and it's being stopped or stifled by the same thing happening in the UK, and they're bumping up against each other. I mean, I don't know. It's weird, though. Foreign officials have taken flagrant censorship actions against tech companies. And it says, U.S. tech companies and U.S. citizens and residents when they have no authority to do so. Residents? Now you're defending U.S. residents? So visa holders? I can't even, you have to laugh out loud that he has the nerve to say that he's standing up for people with visas against people trying to censor them. I mean, it just can't, what world are we living in? But you guys, what else are you going to do? It's the same. Look, when I started telling you that Israel was seen and the world can see the genocide, and that all they could do is just start flailing and for example, they murder people, they're starving them to death. And they go, no, there's more food than ever. My point is like, well, what else are they going to do? They're not going to go, you got me, we're killing them all. They're going to lie until the end. Same point. My point is to show you, one, that they're lying, but two, that they know you see them. They can't patch together a better argument. Or I guess the alternative is they want to make fun of you, that they're trying to upset you. That's certainly possible. But he goes on to say, the State Department called it unacceptable to seek arrest warrants on U.S. citizens or residents over posts on U.S. social media platforms while on U.S. soil. Now, look, I don't actually see the building point he's making. I think this is more of a sidestep about what they're doing to gain some kind of a clout. But the argument being that there's bills in the UK, for example, that are on platforms that we are on as well, where they can say that you're breaking the law over there with what you're posting here. Now, I don't see how that translates to you putting out an arrest warrant for us. Like, I get that. I don't see how this actually puts Americans in any way, unless you're in a foreign country, which then is their prerogative. So to me, it feels dishonest as hell that he's simply trying to go, bad, what you're doing is wrong because we're the good guy, when it's just flimsy and nobody, not even your own followers, believe that right now. But it says, it is similarly unacceptable for foreign officials to demand that America tech platforms, this is what it comes down to, adopt global content moderation policies or engage in censorship activity that reaches beyond their authority. So it's okay, we can censor, but it's not beyond your authority. And into the United States. Well, the reality is he's talking about Twitter, and Twitter has been actively censoring under GARM at the time, or the U.S. lawsuit proved, I think it was over 90%, they said. And I'll even show you another screenshot that was way back when it first started, showing from Grok, and I've talked about in the past. That's why I'm using this tweet again to show you. They might be right here. Yeah. He asked, this is Tiberius. He simply asked Grok, is censorship worse since Musk took over? The answer was, since he took over, the platform's approach to censorship has been both praised and criticized, leading to a complex picture. Increased compliance with government requests. Several reports suggest that Twitter has complied with government requests for content removal at a higher rate than Musk's ownership before when Musk took over. Ask it now. Last time we checked, the number was higher. They admitted this in their own lawsuit. It didn't get a large reach because the people that support him didn't want you to see it. And weirdly, the ones that are supposed to be attacking him based on political sides didn't care to call it out. Weird how that seems to work when it's in the interest of the two-party illusion, always. But the interesting overall here is that he is still censoring. They are actively doing so. So what's the real game here? Is it just him trying to win points to act like he's the good guy? Are they trying to stop them from doing something else with Twitter? Is there something, are they all vying for some kind of overarching control with the new next generation technocratic? I don't know. Something is going on here, and it has nothing to do with whether you're being censored. It is. He goes on to say the new policy, or the article says the new policy comes on the heels of a feud between Twitter and Musk, right? Between Elon Musk and Brazilian Supreme Court judge. Alexander de Moraes after the social media platform was ordered to remove posts. So this is fascinating to me. Do you realize they removed endless amounts of posts for Turkey, for India? I mean, I bet you I can pull that one up. It's just the one I remember. Let's see. Well, it doesn't seem to come up. Oh, well. Huh. That's weird. What was that? Was it Vice? Oh, well. The point is, you can look this stuff up pretty regularly. And it just seems pretty clear that they are actively complying with government requests to remove content they disagree with. And Elon defends it on the platform. He goes, well, we got to follow the law. So, I mean, look, that's for you to decide if you think that's wrong. That's certainly not absolute free speech. That's clear. But so this, why suddenly care there? Does it have to do with Israel? Probably. Here is the reality of, so look at it this way. A lot of the bigger pictures. First of all, the reality that we are being censored in active ways right now. Anti-Semitism bills all across the board. The point is that he's calling out Brazil, UK, and making this big sprawling statement about foreign entities manipulating in this country. And then all of a sudden we have the ADL, Greenblatt, Israel, the entire Israeli government openly calling for suppression of our speech in this country. And you can't even mention that. How is that not the most conspicuous thing in the world? As this person says, so much for free markets, free speech, or freedom in general, right? The ADL is a far-right org, and it's time people recognize it as such. David Goldenberg calls for mass censorship, deplatforming, and repealing Section 230. They're going after that. I mean, here's what's crazy. He's literally pointing at platforms and saying, censor these people, and he can't even point at that. I mean, again, I just have to say it again. How is that not the most conspicuous thing in the world? If there's ever been an example of exactly what he just decided to stand on a soapbox and scream about, it's right in front of him, and he was pointing over them and going, look at the UK. It's embarrassing, guys. Everybody can see that. Here's Glenn Greenwald. The ADL is already exploiting the murder of 2 Israeli embassy staffers to demand more limits on free speech that the U.S. government is happily complying with. Now, here's what Rubio actually had to say, and this is ludicrous. Now, this overlaps with the immigration point. We're not going to go into much more today. Tomorrow, I believe tomorrow. My calendar's not open. I'm most likely to show tomorrow. Then I'll go and do more on that, and Israel in particular as well. But the idea that he can make these statements still to this point about Hamas support, and again, this is about free speech, right? So listen to the way he makes this point, and ask yourself if he could possibly mean what he just said when this is his statement.
Ask you about a decision you made to revoke a student visa for someone at Columbia University this past week. The Wall Street Journal editorial board writes, the administration needs to be careful. It's targeting real promoters of terrorism, not breaking the great promise of a green card by deporting anyone with controversial political views. Can you substantiate any form of material support for terrorism, specifically to Hamas, from this Columbia student, or was it simply that he was espousing a controversial political point of view?
Now, this is the whole Andreessen point. I don't know, they've made in the past. You just keep lying. You don't back down. That's what they've made this point in the past. So what she said, is there material support for Hamas? Is there any evidence for the one thing you keep claiming? And even as he's saying, he's going, yes, yes, yes. He says yes 3 times before she even finishes the sentence. But listen to how he responds.
Well, not just the student. We're going to do more. In fact, we every day now we're approving visa revocations, and if that visa led to a green card.
So his first response is to pivot off and to say, we're going to keep doing it, though. Not the question.
The green card process as well. And here's why. It's very simple.
And now he pivots to why they're doing it. He's successfully stepped 2 steps away now from the real question. Very obvious why.
Apply to enter the United States and you get a visa. You are a guest. You're coming as a student, you're coming as a tourist, or what have you. And in it, you have to make certain assertions. And if you tell us when you apply for a visa, I'm coming to the U.S. to participate in pro-Hamas events.
See, why doesn't he get laughed off the programs with stuff like this? It's an illogical statement. First of all, you're going to argue that they somehow are coming with this devious plot to go to a protest, which, by the way, you're calling pro-Hamas, which we've all can prove to this day. It's been pro-Palestine, and you're late. That's the best you can do. But then they're supposed to know in 5 years I'm going to go to a pro-Palestine protest, and how that, even if it was pro-Hamas, would in any way be illegal? It's not. And it's not pro-Hamas. And so you're saying that they're supposed to have written that down years ago when they applied for a visa? The point is it's irrelevant because you gave them a visa, and now they're here. So if you're going to make an allegation that they gave support for Hamas, you're required to literally prove that. Like it would be for an American. That's due process. That's the only thing that matters in this. The idea that you're somehow supposed to say that because you were in this protest, you lied to us 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago when you applied for this thing is juvenile. That's the best this little Marco Rubio can do. But he still hasn't answered the question, you understand?
That runs counter to the foreign policy interest of the United States of America. It's that simple.
The assumption, the blind assumption that they're supporting Hamas, which no, it doesn't, first of all, seeing as how Israel supports Hamas and they're your chief ally. They fund them right up until October 7th. The point, though, is about trying to deviate, muddy the water. They're a criminal somehow. Just accept that. That's why we don't want them there, even though they didn't break the law. We didn't charge them with a crime. Facts don't matter in this world.
So you lied. You came. If you had told us that you were going to do that, we never would have given you the visa.
That's not how it works, Marco. Like, this is the most embarrassing thing in the world. That's not how this works in any context, let alone that you can somehow blame them for something they didn't even do and assume that they were supposed to tell you that they did the thing that they didn't even do. Like, it's based on a complete illusion.
Now you're here. Now you do it. So you lied to us. You're out. It's that simple.
But see, even in that context, he would still have to prove they did it, which he didn't do. Because first of all, they didn't do that, but they would have to take him to court and prove that they did do something that would violate their visa. It's just this roundabout, circular, broken logic, guys. That's why the only people that are siding with them right now are legitimately stupid. You can laugh at these people online, still arguing that immigrants don't have rights and so on. Like, they're ridiculous.
Is there any evidence of a link to terrorism, or is
same question? See, he never even answered the question.
it just his point of view?
Sure. Yes. Sure. Yes. Again, 3 times. Here's his answer.
Yeah, they take over. I mean, you should watch the news.
Oh, wow. That was compelling. Great start, buddy. Yeah, you should watch the news. So the news is informing you about what these people did to support Hamas? That doesn't sound like an intelligence assessment. That doesn't sound like actual evidence, because he doesn't have it. It's going to be very apparent. What he's going to go say is they lock people in libraries and they didn't do that, though. What he's doing is generalizing allegations that were levied at the entire Columbia students, but that didn't even happen. I broke it down when it happened. The claim they locked people in a library was widely broken down as a complete scam. I showed you the video from both sides, which they didn't, which showed you that nobody was trying to break in. It was a video taken from within the hot library, trying to make it sound like they were coming, and they weren't. There was just a protest going on outside. Or in any number of ways, even if it was the case, Khalil was not there, Ozturk was not there, the kid she's talking about was not there, not in the context he's making. Well, so you can broaden it out and say these things happen, therefore anybody anywhere that has a Palestinian flag is now a Hamas supporter. Even if you did prove that Khalil was at that library, that does not amount in any way, shape, or form to material support for Hamas. This is the one of the most powerful people in the U.S. government, and that's the best this guy could do. You don't think that's desperation, or I guess just hubris? Sad. It really is.
Of a link to terrorism, or is it just his point of view?
Yeah, they take over. You should watch the news. These guys take over entire buildings.
They
vandalize colleges.
Intensely.
They shut down
I'm
colleges.
asking about the
They, as a broad sense. No, they didn't. The people we're talking about did not.
Well, then you should know
justification for the revocation of his visa.
Right. The one person we're discussing.
Is there any evidence of material support for terrorism?
Was the negotiator negotiating on behalf of people that took over a campus?
Oh, so now we're talking about Khalil as the negotiator. You know, the negotiator that was chosen by both sides, including the college, to be the mediator because he was respected by all sides. And every single person involved, including the school, including the Jewish people that were there, have testified that he is actively not in no way racist, in no way supporting Hamas, is simply there to try to find, was protesting in regard to finding peace for Palestine and very actively fighting for peaceful solutions. And you can look for yourself. They lied about literally everything. That's why they still don't have anything. And they're still trying to deport him. They have never charged him with a crime. They're just simply penalizing people for speech. If that's not apparent to you by now, you're either a blindly partisan person or maybe you're illiterate. I don't know. But what he's doing right there has nothing to do with anything other than he did this and we don't like that and he said that. That's childish. We're in kindergarten. That's little Marco Rubio.
That vandalized buildings? Negotiating over what? That's a crime in and of itself, that they're involved in being the negotiator, the spokesperson, this, that, the other.
Wow, you got to listen to that all the way through. And usually he's better than this. He's stumbling, and it's embarrassing.
I mean, you should watch the news. These guys take over entire buildings.
They
vandalize colleges.
Intensely.
They shut down
I'm
colleges.
asking about the specific justification for the revocation of his visa. Was there any evidence of material support for terrorism?
Was the negotiator negotiating on behalf of people that took over a campus, that vandalized buildings? Negotiating over what? That's a crime in and of itself, that they're involved in being the negotiator, the spokesperson, this, that, the other. We don't.
Wow. So now you're claiming that being a spokesperson for a mediation between the school and a protest, which by the way is legal, amounts to material support for Hamas? That's really stupid. Now, that's technically not even that's what she's asking, and his answer would imply that's what he meant. He's not. He's using subjective sidestep emotional arguments. Well, he's proud. It's like saying he can't be father of the year if he got a traffic ticket. Well, does that have anything to do with whether he's part of the gang? No, but we can continue to give you subjective, nonsensical reasons to assume he's a bad guy, which then therefore makes it easier to blindly accept he is a gang member without any evidence. That's not like an accidental thing. That's what these people are doing to human beings with families that have nothing, no evidence whatsoever to back up what they're saying. I mean, even Garcia has some level of background that allows people to think that he might be a bad guy, none of which backs up the claim. Khalil is like a textbook example of a pillar of the community. I mean, guys, look for yourself. The only thing they have is a bunch of narrative that has roundly fallen on its face, and yet idiots like this will still say it, and it will spin back up through the conversation by other idiots online. It never stops. But if your only argument is that he was a mediator for an ongoing conversation, then you just exposed yourself as a liar.
We don't need these people in our country. We never should have allowed him in the first place.
Back to the same emotional response. It's not answering the question.
He had told us, I'm going over there, and I'm going over there to become the spokesperson and one of the leaders of a movement that's going to turn one of your allegedly elite colleges upside down.
What an abstract point. So you're telling me that he mapped out that he was going to go to the college to become a mediator for a protest that hadn't happened yet in support of, I mean, think about how abstract that is. That he's supposed to know this, or he planned it out. And especially since you understand he's chosen by all the sides to bring a resolution to the conversation. How is that violent? How is it any way is that he's trying to work this into the argument that because he did that for both sides, therefore he is Hamas? Therefore he knew he was going to do some evil terrorist thing? Give me an example of any crime, of anything other than your misframing of things that are benign. Think about how terrifying that is for people that he's focusing on. And now they float that Americans are next. This is chilling.
People can't even go to school, library buildings being vandalized. We never would have let them in.
Can't go to school. I mean, you realize that this is like them saying 40 beheaded babies at this point, guys. That's embarrassing. These things were completely manufactured. That's not the same as saying there's no anti-Semitism, no racism, but we can prove this. It's been broken down 100 different ways, like a flag and being stabbed in the eye. And then everyone reported that until it turned out that it was not even remotely true. Or Stefanik claiming they were chanting, "March, kill all the Jews," until the police officer in Congress said that never happened. And yet she still kept saying it. You don't see what's going on here, guys? Hopefully, if you're new to the show, you're beginning to recognize a blind adherence to whatever Israel wants to accomplish at the expense of Americans. You don't think that dovetails with AI and social media and everything else?
Never would have let him in to begin with. And now that he's doing it and he's here, he's going to leave, and so are others, and we're going to keep doing it. And by the way, I find it ironic that a lot of these people out there defending the First Amendment speech, alleged free speech rights of these Hamas sympathizers.
Oh, now it's alleged free speech rights. Are you claiming that they never had them because, again, this is the absurd argument. If they're in this country, they have free speech rights. So he's just saying alleged, which makes other idiots online then begin arguing that they don't have it in the first place. It becomes the double argument as always. We didn't censor them, but if they did, they wouldn't have the right anyway. It's like, okay, you guys are lazy. Obviously, they have free speech rights, and obviously you're suppressing those. That's why he has to make it sound alleged, because he knows what he's doing. They know what they're doing.
So are others, and we're going to keep doing it. And by the way, I find it ironic that a lot of these people out there defending the First Amendment speech, alleged free speech rights of these Hamas sympathizers.
Hamas sympathizers.
They had no problem, pressuring social media to censor American political speech.
Okay, so now you did it first. See, that's the last vestige for lazy arguer. Like, okay, so you did it first, therefore it's okay that I do the thing that I'm also telling you I never did. Every single time. That's Zionist propaganda for you right there. You can't come out and argue you didn't do a thing and then argue why it's okay that you did it. That's stupid. I mean, really absorb that, guys. That is a desperate person lost. You don't have an argument.
Okay, pressuring social media to censor American political speech. So I think it's ironic and hypocritical. But
what, the argument being that literally every American did that? Okay, how about this, Rubio? What about the ones that didn't do that? Can they call you a censor? Can they say you're censoring? I mean, you can't say everyone everywhere was on the same board. Your mindset is that it was only Democrats, most likely. So what about all the Republicans are calling you out right now for censoring these people, whether or not they agree with the immigration agenda? These are broad stroke, lowest common denominator arguments that are meant to rally up the dumbest people in the conversation. That's what they're doing. It's desperate. Ah, dang it.
So I think it's ironic and hypocritical. But the bottom line is this. If you are in this country to promote Hamas, to promote terrorist organizations, to participate in vandalism, to participate in acts of rebellion and riots.
Many of those would be crimes, and you could be charged for those crimes. That's it. To argue that you might do that based on words is censorship.
Campus, we never would have let you in if we had known that. And now that we know it,
is it only
you're gonna
pro-Palestinian people who are going to have their visas revoked, or are other points of view as well?
No, I think anybody who's here in favor. Look, we want to get rid of Tren de Agua gang members.
That was very close. Now, honestly, she could have asked a much better question. And I think it's obvious to me the two-party illusion is playing their part in all this. Because, I mean, you could ask 100 questions right now, if you, like I'm doing, that would make him put him on the spot. I asked you very clearly about material support for Hamas. You have not said a thing yet. You've been tap dancing in every direction about emotional arguments. What was the material support for Hamas? That would be a real journalist. That's not what these people are. Nonetheless, though, she has something that at least somewhat makes a point. And he almost says yes in regard to Palestine, and then realizes that, I think.
We're going to have their visas revoked, or are other points of view as well?
No, I think anybody who's here in favor. Look, we want to get rid of Tren de Agua gang members. They're terrorists too. The president designated them, asked me to designate, and I did, as a terrorist organization. We want to get rid of them as well. We don't want terrorists in America. I don't know how hard that is to understand. We don't want people in our country that are going to be committing crimes. And
all right. So when they told you that you wearing a red hat made you a terrorist, don't forget that. Right? For all those that are going, yeah, these are all immigrant terrorists, and then blindly allowing your government to point to who they want and get rid of them, you're the same thing. You are the Democrats you hate. You are exactly the same thing. The same reason. I mean, imagine it was Biden before and saying you have a red hat, you need to be removed from the country or put in prison because you're a terrorist. Domestic terrorism, guys, the same thing built to where we are now. It is also still aimed at you, and you don't even realize. Just recognize that that's the same conversation. If you were unhappy about being called a terrorist because of an arbitrary thing you were doing that had no real proof to being terrorist, then you should care about this. And don't be swayed away from caring about it because you're told you're not supposed to care about Democrats. That's childish.
Undermining our national security or the public safety. It's that simple, especially people that are here as guests. That is what a visa is. I don't know where we've gotten it in our head that a visa is some sort of birthright. It is not.
No one thinks that.
It is a visitor into our country. And if you violate the terms of your visitation, you are going to leave.
Yeah, as long as you can prove that, bud. If you can prove they did so, I mean, that's the same argument. So you're going to come up and say, you violated this, you're gone. Could you be wrong? Or could you just pretend that's the case? Essentially, since your people seem to want you to be able to do that without ever proving it because you're an immigrant. So how long until you start just going, that's the case, without proving it and sending whoever you want because of maybe they supported Israel or maybe called out Israel rather. I mean, it's just so obvious how subjective it is. Find your principles. Stand up for what's right, regardless of the partisan game that's being played. The idea of what he's saying there at the end here.
In our head that a visa is some sort of birthright.
People might think that if they're also stupid. People that have bought into the other side of the narrative, which is just as stupid in this conversation. The reality is clearly that these things are the best way to say it. Your constitutional rights apply, whether you're an illegal immigrant, whether you are visa, green card, or American citizen. If you still don't know that, I feel bad for you because it's easily you could look it up right now. Ask Rock if you want, if that somehow makes it make more sense for you. It'll also tell you that. Here he is, right? So remember the conversation of him telling you, we're going to stop all the foreign people from trying to censor you, right? Unless they're Israel, of course. Here's what he says about anti-Semitism. Or, oh, that's right. I'm not going to play this one. It just simply says there can be no compromise with anti-Semitism. You know, so words. which that means he's censoring speech. That means he is a hypocrite. But on top of that, realize that you can say free Palestine and he'll call that anti-Semitism. You know, how long until your red hat yet again becomes anti-Semitism? And then all of a sudden, now you're part of the problem. The point is it's subjective, and you know that. Torah Jews, a Orthodox Jewish community, says, isn't the very conflation of Jews with a foreign entity, Israel, the root cause of the anti-Semitism increase? Yes, because they understand the real game that's being played. This is why is it being glossed over? Because he's not honest, because these are liars and they're acting for a foreign country. Open source intel says, this is what Marco Rubio said, the slogan Free Palestine is a rallying cry for the murder of Jews. That's what this idiot is saying. That's the same as saying it's the new Heil Hitler. You're just falling into the new trap. It's yet another manipulation. I could play 17 videos in a row with people from the IDF, foreign Holocaust survivors, Israelis, people around the world that have told you they use this to censor people. He says, when the murderer was arrested after murdering 2 innocent people he thought were Jews, he proudly shouted, Free Palestine. And guess what? He is talking about a Jew and a Christian. You see, the facts don't matter to little Marco Rubio. It's only about adhering to people that control him. It was a Christian Zionist and a woman that was a Jewish person. That is what happened there. But see, they quoted him, and they later, and J.D. Vance did the same thing. They edited their tweets and changed it. So the point is, they knew their marching orders. They knew the way they were supposed to respond to the event before the event even played out. How does that not show you what's going on? How does that not show you who, in fact, is influencing, if not controlling, who these people are? I'll yet again include the long thread of different videos from Donald Trump before the selection process, openly telling you that he's going to censor for Israel. In 16 different ways, showing you that he said he's going to censor this, he's going to censor that, he's going to stop you from doing it all around Israel. Whether saying, I'm going to get rid of the Jew haters, which is just an idea, even though we know that they're calling that to anybody with a Palestinian flag. Or, I mean, on and on. Or the clip saying that Israel's supposed to control Congress. If you haven't heard it, it's in his own words, right in front of you. I've played it 1,000 times. Problem is, people just don't want to see it. Now, Thomas Massie tweeted yesterday, if we're going to have campaign disclosure laws at all, the paid grifters on X and other platforms should be required to disclose who's paying them to influence elections. That's a pretty interesting statement. And he goes, appreciate the grifters and grifter sock puppets accounts outing themselves in the comments below. See, because all of a sudden, because of the idiots like Cat Turd out there, Massie, pretty much the only American first politician out there, one of the people that you could see in that general direction, well beyond anybody in the left-right paradigm, all suddenly calling him a traitor. A communist traitor. Why? Because Trump didn't like being told he was wrong about the bill. Now, that's what's so funny about this. Massie didn't come out and say, Trump's an idiot. The big, beautiful bill is going to do the opposite. You know what he's talking about. No, he came out and said, I have an opinion about this. I think this is the wrong direction. I think this is going to increase the debt. This is what there's. You're not allowed. That's the Trump first versus America first. He's not calling him out. He's simply having a different opinion. Is he not afforded to have an opinion against the current Trump machine? I mean, think about that. And instead, when it got asked in front of him, Trump said, oh, he's a grandstander. He doesn't really know what he's doing. And everyone knows that. The infant in the room, the insecure infant in the room, full of hubris. This is how, I mean, that's, look, I can criticize. You understand out there that it's not a partisan thing for me. I think Biden's a senile idiot. I think Trump is a hubris-packed child, the way he acts. It's things like this that show you that. How can you act that way, especially when you know that most of your base really supports Thomas Massie? Because you're insecure, because you can't allow a moment of deviation. Maybe it's because he sees that things are shifting. I don't know. But the point here is he says if we're going to do this, we have to expose all of this. People that are grifting on Twitter to manipulate the outcome of, that's really happening. But that segues, and maybe that's why he posted this yesterday, into this conversation. Now, this is very interesting to me. Lena writes this, and we're going to come back to the documents. First, why does Israeli government have U.S. media contracts? And you'll see that we'll go over the actual documents. It's CNN, New York Post, Fox News, Daily Mail, Daily Wire. It's nonpartisan is the point. Overlaps with the Trump administration, overlaps with 2 different media groups that I think are very influential. It's showing you one quick spotlight to the larger Israeli influence over media, policy, politicians, everything. Before we go there, I want to start with an article from 2024, from August. You might have seen this from The Cradle. The Guardian put something out about this. I'll also include the article Lee Fang put out with Jackson Paulson about this conversation. They just had some of the links that I grabbed that I couldn't find anywhere else, so I want to include that. But it says, Israel sought to bypass foreign agent law, the FARA Act, to spread propaganda in the United States. So it's being revealed, or was revealed, that they tried to figure out how to bypass that. Interesting timing, right? Right before now, last year, in August last year, they were trying to figure out a way to not be seen for this. Think about how relevant that is to what's currently happening and what I think is actually going on. So let's read through this. Let me grab one thing really quickly. I'm going to play. Actually, let me play this, and I'll play this as well. This is worth hearing, and this is about the influence from the government perspective, intelligence.
Of how fluid the violence is. There have been assassination attempts on Trump. By the time this interview is being broadcast, who knows what else will have been going on by the military-industrial complex to prevent the Trump administration, or by the Israelis to prevent Harris. Who knows? But you've written about Unit 8200. That's Israeli SIGINT national units. I mean, there have been claims that Lebanese resistance have bombed them actually in the past few days. How it uses the National Security Agency, which of course Edward Snowden showed was used routinely to surveil, mass surveillance. Snowden, of course, now in Moscow after seeking asylum. I mean, how is Israeli intelligence embedded within the firmament of U.S. intelligence, and could it be used to manipulate tomorrow's elections?
Well, the Unit 8200 is extremely powerful. It's about the same as the NSA, the National Security Agency. I've done 3 books on NSA, so I'm fairly familiar with that. And I was, I think, the first person to interview Ed Snowden in Moscow for Wired magazine. And when I talked to him, he was adamant that there was a great deal of cooperation between the United States and Israel. Unit 8200. The relationship between NSA and Unit 8200 is the closest foreign relationship that NSA has. And the NSA has a liaison officer embedded with Unit 8200, and Unit 8200 has a liaison officer embedded right at Fort Meade, where NSA is headquartered. So there's enormous cooperation. And what the documents that came from Snowden showed was that the Israelis were pressing NSA to get actual location, geolocation of people that they were attempting to assassinate. The liaison officer, NSA liaison officer, pushed back, saying that under US law, we're not allowed to give you information that will allow you to assassinate somebody. And then another document came back saying that the Israeli 8200 had worked out some kind of a cooperative agreement with the NSA to sort of overcome that problem.
Oh, well, gee, you can only imagine, and this is not a brand new clip, you can only imagine what that would mean for the most Zionist administration in history. How long until you suddenly become on the, the chopping block, as it were?
In other words, basically NSA gave them the information they needed to help with the assassinations, and that probably is still going on today with the assassinations that have been taking place this past summer.
Yep. Very interesting. So we'll come back to these documents. Let's go through this first. And keeping this in mind and how obvious it is that Israel has been building its presence in this country. The Cradle writes, the Israeli government sought legal advice on how to bypass U.S. federal law governing the spreading of propaganda among the U.S. population by foreign states. Funny how Rubio makes this statement. And, it's so embarrassing that they think you can't see right through that. An investigation published on August 17th by The Guardian in collaboration with Lee Fang and Jack Paulson, the article we already showed you. U.S. federal law requires the disclosure of foreign-backed lobbying campaigns, but leaked documents reviewed by The Guardian show the Israeli government sought legal advice concerning a law out of concern that Jewish and Christian Zionists, lobbying groups working in coordination with the Israeli government, would be required to register as foreign agents and disclose their ties to Israel. Now, here's the thing. They know that. As I said, going back to JFK, FARA Act, or rather specifically AIPAC, or many other examples beyond that. So this is not about them suddenly realizing this. I think the point is, why suddenly now? You know, like what was about to be done, what was going to happen, what was the coming agenda that made you kind of go, okay, we got to get ahead of this. We know this is accusations going to come into play. How do we get ahead of this now? Why now is the point? Because they've always seen it. They've always known that. That's what's relevant to ask. The documents, which include emails and legal memos originating from the hack of the Israeli Justice Ministry, show that Israeli officials proposed creating a new U.S. nonprofit in order to continue Israel's activities in the U.S. while avoiding scrutiny under the law. You see, people know what AIPAC is. They know what the ADL, this is about trying to create a U.S. entity, which is not a U.S. entity, rather, and that's actually, we'll come back to things like this. That's exactly the point of that Whitney wrote this article for TLAV back in 2023, The Prince and the Spy. The point was Eric Prince being used essentially by the Israeli entities as sort of the foot in the door as the U.S. entity to make it arguably not a foreign government dynamic. That's how that's also used. Or the idea that they use Unit 8200 to basically position themselves in businesses they start and pretend that those aren't intelligence. It's all very public, guys. It's insane how clear this is. So the point here, Lee Fang and Jack Polson write, a legal strategy memo dated July 2018 noted that compliance with the Foreign Agents Registration Act would damage the reputation of several American groups that receive funding and direction from Israel and force them to meet onerous transparency requirements. A separate memo noted that donors would not want to fund groups registered under FARA. Now, my mind goes to the upcoming Trump administration. Knowing, in my opinion, that this was part of the plan, you can disagree with that, saying, okay, well, we need to get ahead of how much we are going to be pulling these strings, if not basically taking control of the U.S. government. Or whatever you want to think about it. This is where my mind goes. And then ask yourself how relevant it is to come back to the conversation of no ethics pledges. I knew this would be more relevant, and this is how I see it anyway. The idea of that they're, as they said, maybe they're being influenced by a foreign government. Interesting. So this is back in 2018, where they're going like, we got to get ahead of this because things are coming in the future, near future, where we might need to shift this. Now, this is not unique to Trump, by the way. That's the point. Biden is the same thing. See, if you're always out here thinking we're taking a partisan line, you're going to miss the forest for the trees, guys. The point is Biden's administration or the one before that or the one before that were adherent to whatever Israel was at least pressuring them to do. It's not hard to see. My point is that what we're seeing from Biden to now is a rapid increase of the larger U.S. government, nonpartisan, Great Reset, technocratic, Zionist, globalist type agenda. Seems pretty clear to me. So ask yourself what they saw coming down the pipeline. And now it says the memo says the Israeli government was worried about FARA because it compels registrants to, quote, flag any piece of propaganda that is distributed to two or more parties in the U.S., with a disclaimer stating that it was delivered by a foreign agent and then submit a copy of the propaganda to the U.S. Department of Justice within 48 hours. See, if they don't register, that means they can dump as much propaganda in the hands of whoever they want to and influence, pay, bribe, whatever else, which they do anyway. To prevent FARA registration and the stigma and scrutiny associated with it, the legal advisor suggested channeling funds through a third-party U.S. nonprofit. Liat Glazer, a legal advisor to Israel's Ministry of Strategic Affairs, wrote that even though the new U.S. nonprofit would not be formally managed from Israel, quote, we will have means of supervision and management through grant making and informal coordination mechanisms such as oral meetings and updates. Please let that sink through. The Israeli government saying, well, we'll be in control. It'll be a U.S. nonprofit in every way you can see, but we will be dictating what happens. And if we are the ones dictating it, then if we're registered as a foreign agent, then that will end up calling attention to this. It's deliberate subversion, guys. It's right in front of you. The Israeli government was specifically concerned that a U.S.-based nonprofit called Kela Shlomo, which translates to Solomon's Sling, would be forced to register under FARA. The group was formed in 2017 by Israel's Ministry of Strategic Affairs to distribute Israeli propaganda. Rebranded as Concert in 2018, and then Voices of Israel in 2021. Interesting thing, the Voices of Israel. The group focused on undermining the BDS movement. a completely constitutional movement that they don't want to happen. So same as always, which BDS movement, which leads boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaigns against Israel in protest of its illegal occupation of Palestine and apartheid laws. Interesting to set the tone with that, to know where we're coming from with this. So here are the documents you can read. Again, it is in Hebrew, but the provable documentation that you rarely get from this kind of conversation, which is that they are on the record openly telling us that they want to try to circumvent, subvert, to get away from the FAR Act because they want to spread propaganda. Here, well-documented emails back and forth in the same conversation, a list with money being paid out. Very real. Israel feared legal trouble over U.S. advocacy efforts, leaked file suggests. I'll include all these for you. So let's get back to the actual documentation. Again, keeping in mind the lack of ethics pledges for this exact kind of overlap. So thank you again to Lena. Not familiar with the account, but this is where I first saw it. Worth giving a shout out to people that, and well, technically thank you to We Are All Palestine who tagged me, but whoever showed it first, that's important to me. So here is the Open Secrets website. I just want to make sure you guys see that these are from March 3rd, 2025. That's important. That's where and specifically in regard to Targeted Communications Global LLC. The first one, this is all under the FAR Act. Now this is received as of you see at the very top, March 3rd, 2025. The name of the registrant. Now the way this works, I don't have to read through all this, but the bottom line is this is basically a registration form for people that have to register as a foreign agent, or groups or companies or anything connected to that. So you're supposed to basically you fill this out and you submit it to the government. So these are officially submitted documents through the FAR Act. Exhibit A to registration statement pursuant to the Foreign Agents Registration Act. So here it says, just make a skim issues I want to point out. Okay, so the name of the registrant, person who's filling it out. In this case, for the company, Targeted Communications Global LLC. And guess who the foreign principal is? The Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So you can't hide that the Israeli government is a foreign actor, right? So that's the point. Is this is something that in the past was not necessarily highlighted. That we have the Israeli Foreign Ministry of Affairs funding directly a targeted communications global. And we're going to get into the overlap here. I mean, we're going to get into the more specific tangent, the offshoots of that, which are just one's called targeted victory. And these are about digital manipulation. Country registration, Israel. Sorry, my scroll is acting funny. Okay, scrolling down. Catherine Reynolds is the name of this, the one documented on this. There's your signature. I think that was the one point on this. Make sure I'm not missing anything. I couldn't highlight these. Okay, yeah. So I did start with this one. Okay, so at the bottom of this one, and the names are important, by the way, as well. So keep in mind who these are and recognize that they are literally registering as a foreign agent, or the company through it, and she's a part of the company. So down here, they also include Apex. Response to item 11 list. This is an item 11 list. Prior to the date of registration for this foreign principal, has the registrant engaged in any registrable activities, such as political activities, for this foreign principal? So whether Kathleen is on behalf of the company that's being guided by the Israeli Foreign Ministry or by the ministry that they're acting on behalf of, what have they done is what it's asking. If yes, describe in full the details of these activities. It says the response, should include, among other things, the relations, interests, and policies sought to be influenced and the means employed to achieve this purpose. If the registrant arranged, sponsored, or delivered speeches, lectures, social media, internet postings, or media broadcasts, give details as to dates, places of delivery, names of speakers, and subject matter. The response must also include, but not be limited to, activities involving lobbying, promotion, perception management, public relations, economic development, and preparation and dissemination of informational materials. Set forth the details of the registered political activities below. And here's what you notice. Danny Sanchez from CNN. through email, got a media placement. Okay, so that means funding through the media for a media placement, advertisement, propaganda, news report. Tom, as I've been showing you guys repeatedly, the New York Post, media placement. Fox News, media placement. Daily Mail, it's all the same. NBC, Fox News, NBC, Fox News, New York Post, Fox News Radio, Daily Wire, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, Newsmax, media placement. So in case you're missing the point, that means that targeted communications global that is being directed by the Israeli Ministry of Defense is basically placing media inside the U.S. government media apparatus. Shouldn't be much of a bombshell. Pretty sure it's pretty obvious today, but I think that's pretty profound for people that don't know this is happening. Here's another one. Specifically, this person's name is Matthew Gorman. Provided to DOJ under separate cover, the resident's address. Occupation, executive vice president of a company called Targeted Victory. Targeted Victory is a digital-first agency on the cutting edge of campaigns and communications. Okay? Let's look. Guess what? What is the name of the address of the primary registry? And this is why this had to be done. Targeted Communications Global. Okay, so now you've got another tangential aspect of this. You've got Matthew Gorman running Targeted Victory, which is under the umbrella of Targeted Communications Global, which is being funded and influenced by Israel. Right here. Israel Ministry of Foreign Affairs. That's pretty interesting, don't you think? There's a few more things on this one. Right here. Look at that. Matthew Gorman. Trump National Committee, JFC. Credit card. There's two of those listed under donors. It basically says, during the period beginning 60 days prior to the date of your obligation, have you from your own funds and your own behalf, either directly or through any other person, made contributions of money? So, just that he is involved. I just think that's interesting. I don't think it's hard. It's, be clear, because somebody supports somebody else does not therefore make them a criminal. That's the very two-party illusion thing to do. It should be a data point that you consider, but guilt by association is not guilt. It's possible. This one, again, for Targeted Communications Global. All these are, what you notice is they're all from the 3rd, but varying by minutes based on the postings. 407:38, 407:31, see my point? So it's all dumped as of recently in March 2025. So this one's in Arlington, Virginia, by the way. Let's not forget how close, there's very clear intelligence overlaps to that exact location. Targeted Communications Global being influenced by Israel, Arlington, Virginia. It could mean nothing, but I think we all know it probably doesn't. Catherine Reynolds, the one we already showed you before, right, was connected to the whole dynamic. And this was, she provides public affairs and media consulting services. Registrant is owned by Targeted Holdings, LLC. So it all connects to the same conversation, which is a subsidiary of Stagwell Marketing Communications, LLC. Those would be something we should look into. Right here, provided DOJ under separate cover. Matthew Gorman, Brian Martin Schmidt, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Provided media relations council. So you just have to understand, this is a foreign government who is, in some cases, registering that they're influencing, connecting media placements, funding people in the media, and we know the government overlap. Same place. And then again, Matthew Gorman, Trump National Committee. This one, I think we already looked at this one. Oh, no, this is the other one. So same point, Brian Martin Schmidt was one of the other elements in all of this. And it's the same point. Targeted Communications Global, Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. All these are included for you to look for yourself. Again, digital first agency on the cutting edge of campaigns and communication. You know what that means, propaganda. Even if you think it's a positive thing. And there's Stagwell, proud member of Stagwell Global. Now, this will be something worth going through in more depth. I'll include this as well for the receipt profile of Targeted Victory. And this is what's interesting. So to make the larger point at the end, I think it's pretty clear that Targeted Victory is an extension of the group that's being influenced by the Israeli Foreign Ministry Affairs to the point to where they had to register under FARA, okay? Here, Targeted Victory, not to be confused with Targeted Communications Global, which is not to be confused with Stagwell. Like, that's how this works. Shell among shell among shell. So making the point that Targeted Victory is connected, look at what they're doing. This is just 2020. Look at this. National Republican Senatorial Committee, $50 million. National Republican Congressional Committee, $35 million. America First Action, $25 million. McConnell Senate, on and on. Scalise, McCaughey, Purdue. Look at all this money they're throwing around. You think that's accident? I mean, we already know how much money. That's $237 million just in 2020 from a group that I think we can easily prove is tied back to Israel. Let's look at 2024. Or even better yet, let's go back to, let's see. Just trying to look at the overlap. I mean, it's always nonpartisan. If maybe this is one aimed more so at the Republicans, I don't know. It does make sense with the overlaps and the America First stuff, but just recognizing even 2024, $15 million, National Republican Congressional Committee. You don't think that has an influence on what they decide to do? To me, I think this is transparent. All included for you. Now, knowing that overlap and influence, whether it's funding through media, government or not, the outcome, the social media, rather the social engineering. Prince and the Spy is a great article for you to read on that very point, but we've also referenced some others from Minpress News, for example. This was a thread from 2024. Here's the actual article. Revealed the Israeli spies writing American news. It's not new. And he goes, Alan McLeod goes and breaks this down piece by piece for each individual. A new Minpress News investigation reveals that a number of the most influential journalists in the United States were previously operatives of the Unit 8200 Israeli spy agency. Imagine having this much evidence. I mean, provable overlaps. And so many people either are desperate to not acknowledge it because they don't want to be called racist or are too afraid to call it out or are part of it. Nonetheless, we all see it. That's my point about all this. It can't be ignored at this point. Then there's this clip again. I might as well just play it since we may have missed it at the beginning. And this is about specifically the NSA, Unit 8200, the influence. I mean, it is not just politics, guys. This is an intelligence invasion.
Because of how fluid the violence is, there have been assassination attempts on Trump. By the time this interview is being broadcast, who knows what else will have been going on by the military-industrial complex to prevent the Trump administration, or by the Israelis to prevent Harris. Who knows? But you've written about Unit 8200. That's Israeli SIGINT national units. I mean, there have been claims that Lebanese resistance have bombed them actually in the past few days. How it uses the National Security Agency, which of course Edward Snowden showed was used routinely to surveil, mass surveillance. Snowden, of course, now in Moscow after seeking asylum. I mean, how is Israeli intelligence embedded within the firmament of U.S. intelligence, and could it be used to manipulate tomorrow's elections?
Well, the Unit 8200 is extremely powerful. It's about the same as the NSA, the National Security Agency. I've done 3 books on NSA, so I'm fairly familiar with that. And I was, I think, the first person to interview Ed Snowden in Moscow for Wired magazine. And when I talked to him, he was adamant that there was a great deal of cooperation between the United States and Israel Unit 8200. The relationship between NSA and Unit 8200 is the closest foreign relationship that NSA has. And the NSA has a liaison officer embedded with Unit 8200, and Unit 8200 has a liaison officer embedded right at Fort Meade, where NSA is headquartered. So there's enormous cooperation. And what the documents that came from Snowden showed was that the Israelis were pressing NSA to get actual location, geolocation of people that they were attempting to assassinate. The liaison officer, NSA liaison officer, pushed back, saying that under US law, we're not allowed to give you information that will allow you to assassinate somebody. And then another document came back saying that the Israeli 8200 had worked out some kind of a cooperative agreement with the NSA to sort of overcome that problem. In other words, basically, NSA gave them the information they needed to help with the assassinations, and that probably is still going on today with the assassinations that have been taking place this past summer.
Now, doesn't that seem concerning with the whole 2018 forward overlap we were just discussing, of worrying about how they were going to be seen for FARA in 2024? And, something has clearly shifted. That's not just me pointing that out. Something's different now. Maybe it's not, maybe it's in this bad direction we're worried about. To make those points, Glenn Greenwald called this out on the 17th of May. You'll never guess which was the most visited country by members of U.S. Congress in 2023. I'll give you 3 guesses. You'll never get it. Of the trips, there were 90 were sponsored by organized by AIPAC's educational program. American, and don't forget what I'm blanking on his name all of a sudden. Former CIA agent has said many times. I almost had it. Basically, that they will harass and threaten and even attack American agents that go to Israel. He told the story about how they cut their dog's tail off and wrapped it in gauze and left it under the Christmas tree or whatever the story. Like, it's just lunacy stuff. Or I think I'm conflating those. One was about stealing the presents under the tree, and then one was about leaving their dog's chopped off tail. Like, in any context, that's sociopathic, psychopathic level stuff. The point is, they go there under manipulation, propagandized stuff, do their fake North Korea tour kind of thing. 156 trips for Israel. 156. Let's not forget, we already saw this. State Department revealed to be using Israeli intelligence-linked chat app involved in a hack of the Trump administration. Now, here's how this went down. It became the Signal Gate became the story, which buried the reality that because he was not using Signal, he was using an app made by Israeli intelligence that archives the Signal chat, which then got them hacked. You don't think, look, that's my opinion. That was not anything but Israel. That's what we watched. And that was Waltz, a blind Zionist who was using an Israeli tech app that allowed it all to happen. And the story gets sidelined by the idea that they were using Signal and a Signal Gate. That's a deliberate deviation by the media that's supposed to be going after this administration. Make sense of it for me. You will if you understand the Israeli influence over the whole damn conversation. They're spying, they're influencing, they're manipulating outcomes. It's everywhere you look, guys. Dana McAdams says, which homeland is the Homeland Security Secretary trying to secure here? Well, here is any number of examples. Here's Kristi Noem attending a memorial ceremony in Jerusalem, honoring Yaron Lachinsky and Sarah Milgrom, Israeli embassy staffers killed in a terror attack. So she flies all the way to Israel because of that. Kristi Noem, the secretary, think about how many different ways the America First administration has actively done things for a foreign government at the expense of Americans, or focused on policy for Israelis that it has nothing to do with Americans, like Pam Bondi doing investigations of October 7th. Explain these things to me. Here, Mike Lauer. It was a pleasure to meet Prime Minister Netanyahu in Jerusalem. Did they all fly to Jerusalem? What is he even doing there as a member of Congress? To discuss regional security and our ironclad alliance. What do you have to do with that? They are people in positions of power, but the idea that they should be so regularly flying to a foreign government to discuss with this one head of state, how do we? Again, it's almost like we don't need to pretend like anybody doesn't see this, guys. That's strange. It just is, and you could argue why, but you have to acknowledge that that's weird, and how all of them go and basically bow at the altar of Israel every single time. The U.S. remains committed to Israel's defense as we look forward. You mean the ongoing genocide that the whole world can see, that even the corporate media has now shifted, but not the bought-off Zionist politicians? Think about that. Oh, yeah. Oops. Wrong one. Let me go back. I think I wrote something here, but I might not be able to go back. Oh, yeah. So he just said, it's a pleasure to meet Netanyahu to discuss the security ironclad alliance. The U.S. remains committed to Israel's defense as we look forward to diplomatic solutions for lasting peace. And I said, correction. The U.S. government is committed to Israel's genocide. The American people, not so much. Hashtag Israel first. Here, Prime Minister of Israel says Benjamin Netanyahu and his wife today met with Senator Dave McCormick and his wife. Okay, I don't even know who McCormick is. Another Republican. Sure does not feel like America first to me. Why the hell is this happening? You know why. I think we just went through it today. Then, of course, even worse, whether you agree with all that or not, imagine having this happen and then flocking to support that government regardless, on top of a genocide. So if you didn't see this, and we will talk about this more, as Mohammed Chiata points out, so basically they'd been developing into this situation where they were trying to manufacture the ethnic cleansing to a final degree. And so they've been starving and murdering and displacing and torturing and raping, all of which has been proven. And the aid conversation has been insulting from the very beginning, as they were bombing trucks right in the beginning, acting like it wasn't owning it until it became a problem. Then he pretended like it was Hamas, lying about it every time, continuing to lie about Hamas taking food, which even the World Food Program has spoken up and said there's no evidence of that. And so they manufacture this into driving them in to one location. Argument being that they were trying to shovel all the people over to the south to be able to then argue why they have to move them all in one big swoop. It's exactly what we told you was going to happen. The problem is that not only did they not feed these people, they ended up shooting at them. They ended up exactly what you'd expect if you're even barely paying attention. Thousands of starved Gazans stormed the dystopian Israeli-American aid complex in Rafah after being forced to stand in endless queues and bake in the sun in a fenced concentration camp. What they called it a concentration camp. They called it a concentrated, I don't know if they used camp, but it was concentrated, whatever. So that wasn't a term used by accident. And while being subjected to biometric surveillance, which was also happening, which I've been trying to tell you since the first couple months of this, scanning their their iris scans and their face print, and having them sign documents that they'll forego the right of return. That's a lot of this was all about. That's my point, guys. It's been overlapped with the global agenda from the beginning. U.S. mercenaries and Israeli troops opening fire as they're loading up. Now, long story short, the point is that they jammed them up in this area. These people are starving to death. That's not debatable. And then all of a sudden, they weren't getting food. Nobody was allowed through, and people got restless, desperate, which was many of us before this ever got to this point, we're saying this is what they're going to do. Like the Flower Massacre. They drive them to desperation, then blame them for why they're desperately trying to seek food, right? You bring in a truck for 1 million people, and then you ask why they're going to scramble desperately to get to it first. And the point is, they've been lied about how it went down. So this is first, the U.S. Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation opened fire on civilians after losing control over its so-called aid distribution point in West Rafah, with armed personnel responding by shooting instead of managing the crowd properly. The foundation, accused of being political tool rather than a relief entity, has no humanitarian track record and operates without transparency or regulation, which is what they made the case. A lot of other people want to be involved, and they go, you're Hamas, and then they manufactured the problem, as usual. Despite repeated calls, Israel continues to block established and legal aid agencies like UNRWA and the World Food Program, while claiming Hamas is doing it, and everyone knows they're not, from delivering assistance, obstructing organized and safe humanitarian operations in Gaza. And not only that, the food they're ending up with is almost entirely with Hebrew writing from Israel. So not only are they benefiting from their starvation tactics by using their own resource, selling food to the people, then, the government program buying it and selling it back to them. It's disgusting, but they've manufactured this. You can look there for yourself. Jeremy Scahill simply puts it this way. He says, as the Israeli aid scheme staffed by U.S. mercenaries begins in Gaza, there is already a report of a Palestinian being kidnapped when he went to get one of the small boxes of food. His family says he went to Mirage Crossing Aid Distribution Center. Quote, to our shock, he called us under threat from Israeli intelligence officers, demanding information about one of the relatives with whom he had no contact since the beginning of the war. Quote, when we were unable to provide the information the army requested, communication was cut off, and we were later informed that he was transferred to a detention center he is now considered missing. Feels very reminiscent to people in this country being shoved to El Salvador, right? But guess what? They've been dealing with this for a century. Here is the statement from the Gaza Relief Committees describing the overall situation with the aid distribution. So here's the lies. You get people like this. So bottom line, I'm doing this quickly because I want to include it today, but we're going to talk about it more, is that they created a choke point to where people then we're talking all day standing in the open sun, already starving, already lacking water, and they recognized what was happening. And so the point is, after recognizing they were being toyed with by these monsters, they decided to try to rush in the place and it's not Hamas. It's not a Hamas-controlled area. It's not even Hamas in the area. This is a World Food Program location. This is 40 times over. You can prove this. But the people like Vivid, these are blind. These people have been exposed 50 times over for being caught lying just since October 7th about what Israel does. So it says, breaking, Gazans are storming Hamas's warehouse. You see this? See, they could just simply say that that Gazans are stealing the food. Instead, they have to lie on top. That's what the Israeli propaganda is always like. I mean, the whole point is they manufactured this riot, they're going to call it, because they wanted to claim they were all monsters, despite they're watching their children starve to death and then being basically creating a situation where you know they're going to strive for the small amount you provide. And they could just say, look at these people who are attacking us for their food. That would be enough to manipulate people in the middle. But instead, they have to go even further and say it's Hamas's, and Hamas is shooting them when they try to get it. Or even crazier, people out there going, the Gazans are finally rising up against Hamas and demanding their food back. It's completely a lie from top to bottom. This person just points that out. It's a UN warehouse, which you can easily look up, not Hamas, and it was preparing packages to be sent out. The problem that the UN has encountered is that there are gangs in Gaza, which we've already reported, the Cradle and others have reported, are being influenced and in many cases directed by Israel. And whether that, which is a provable reality. Roberts talked about this. But on top of that, if they're not Hamas, then you can't keep blaming Hamas because that makes it easier for you. That's just what they're doing. But it says they've been working to undermine the aid effort with Israel's assistance. They provide these gang covers with airstrike Gazan officials and police to try to stop them. I mean, it's very documented. Here's another example. You know all these guys. This Eli Jacobi, this manipulator, has been caught lying 100 times over. Here's an outside version. You can see the World Food Program right there. And he goes, Palestinians have broken into Hamas's warehouse. You can prove that warehouse is not Hamas controlled. That's how lazy these people are. And he goes, it's increasingly clear aid crisis isn't due to a lack of supply. That's the only thing they're trying to push in. The chairman of the Euromed Human Rights Group says this is the Al-Jarafi warehouse, which belongs to the UN World Food Program. It was being prepared to send flour to the starving people in northern Gaza. But Israel obstructed its delivery. Israel and its supporters have nothing but lies, and more lies. And the bottom line is, guys, just because people are protecting the food does not mean they're Hamas. It's just so blatant what they're doing. And the point is, the reason that wasn't being moved is because Israel was stopping it from happening. Here, in case it matters to you anymore, Reuters, World Food Program says hordes of hungry people broke into Gaza warehouse in deadly incident. And you can read for yourself. It's their warehouse. And they're simply saying they broke in because all of this is being driven to reality because they're starving to death. To blame somebody for doing that is the worst thing I can imagine right now. Now, on top of that, by the way, Turkey apparently donated bags of flour that Israel then dumped in a corner and never even delivered while delivering burial shrouds to people starving to death. Like, not just not feeding them, but giving them death shrouds as if that's, you can't be more dark than that, more sociopathic. Now, here is what the U.S. State Department said under Donald Trump. And if you haven't gotten sick by now, this is going to put you over the top. I just said, wow, just speechless that they can still hold this line after all this time. And if you thought there was daylight between what Biden was doing and Trump, guys, you're not paying attention. Here is how they responded to Prem Thacker in regard to children starving, everything that's been going on. Her response is just straight back to the day one talking points.
Said just earlier today, the world has been shocked by what's happened in Gaza over the past few days. The silhouette of a little girl.
Well, I said it's been shocked over generations about what's been happening in Gaza.
Absolutely.
And that Hamas certainly has refused to stop that violence. But go ahead.
Way to set the tone. Right. We're all outraged about the ongoing century-long thing, and it's always Hamas. Go ahead. That's how she sets the tone. We all know it's only Hamas. That's it. I guess, God darn it, man. It's so frustrating. This is, my point is always is that you know what their job is here. Their job is to do that. But we've gotten to this point where I just can't stop seeing how cartoonish this all is. Instead of doing even the smallest amount of effort to make it somewhat digestible, some kind of nuance that makes it go, well, you're not correct in that, but it's not it's not the day one Israel regurgitated point that you could literally prove isn't true. But I think genuinely this current administration is the most obvious example of either a foreign government manufactured moronic reality or people that have just been through lesser of evils over multiple administrations getting worse and dumber and stupider and unmuslim. These people are in these positions because I think they're so stupid or so willing to toe the line that neither one matters. You tell me I'm wrong. It's embarrassing to watch what some of these people are saying. It's always been an exercise in futility at these State Department meetings or any of them. But am I wrong that it's gotten more ridiculous to the point to where they're telling you 2 + 2 = 5? right? Not some nuance of a different kind of mathematics, but nope, just the absolute lie, shut up and take it.
So, but just in the past few days, we've seen the silhouette of a little girl trying to flee burning classrooms surrounding her, killing people around her. We've seen thousands of Palestinians starved by Israel's blockade, herded between fences as they try to get fed today. A doctor who saw 9 of her children killed by Israeli bombs.
Right, so all these things which you can literally prove have nothing to do with Hamas, right? Israel bombs killing 9 children of a doctor, right?
All the while, this administration, of course, as we've seen, has sought to deport students who protest this, including one student who wrote an op-ed against this kind of behavior. The administration came in telling Americans it would be more pro-peace, more anti-war than the previous.
This is beginning to sound like a soliloquy, sir. Do you have a question, please? Do you have a question, please?
I'm curious.
Yes, that's a very serious issue, and everyone has your question.
Yes.
So please ask it.
I wonder how you see this administration being more pro-peace or more anti-war than the previous administration, given these kinds of horrors that Americans are witnessing.
Yes, well, it is a dynamic where, as I also just mentioned a little bit ago, we did achieve a ceasefire, something which...
No, you didn't. Right, let's start right out of the gate with a blatant lie. No, you said that, and then Israel killed everybody from day one, never stopped. Over and over and over, the whole time, Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza the entire time. And then broke that ceasefire that never even actually started because they wanted to add something that nobody else did, because they were promised they would be able to break the deal in phase 2, literally like we told you they would, because we watched and reported what they said. Not some abstract, I mentioned one thing and different thing every 5 days. Every day I mentioned something different than when it happened. I was right. No, we were literally correct based on the one thing that we knew was going to happen or that we reported was likely. That's actually being right in a story, not guessing every possible scenario over the week and then saying the one that I said was right and then usually being wrong. like, are we still pretending that Netanyahu and Trump split? Are we still pretending like the Ukraine war was ended? Are we still pretending those drones are searching for nuclear missiles? Yeah. How many different times can we be lied to by the mainstream alternative media? Anyway, point.
Previous administration, given these kinds of horrors that Americans are witnessing.
Yes, well, it is a dynamic where, as I also just mentioned a little bit ago, we did achieve a ceasefire, something which nobody thought would be possible. After the heinousness of October 7th, the nature of what had occurred.
Right, because it was just so bad that they thought it wasn't going to happen. It's your argument is always, look at how bad they are with what they did. Are you ignoring the majority of people that were killed by the IDF, which what we can prove today based on colonels and IDF members and witnesses and Jewish people that were there on the ground? All of it telling you, Hannibal directive, they killed their own people. Or the foreknowledge, or the way the concert was moved, or the way they were used as human shields. The reality that you can just keep going, it was so bad. Yeah, and people were killed and it was bad. It was a hell of a lot worse, objectively, every single day since then in Gaza. The ongoing starvation, rape, torture, murder, and everything else you could imagine. And then the lies on top of all of it about the babies that were killed and the rape and everything else that didn't even happen. But see, Tammy Bruce knows her marching orders.
On that day, the fact that there has to be a new way, the president has stated, we have to have new ideas to make a difference so this stops and doesn't go from generation to generation. What we've got.
Right. So the new ideas are do exactly what they've always wanted to do. That's the new idea. The same thing they've always wanted to do. Ethnic cleansing, displacement, occupation. Brand new. No, they're just now doing what they've always wanted to do, and they're telling you finally.
Got here is after, I don't know, what has it been, 3 months, a bit over 100 days of President Trump, managing to get, I think, every warring party, every hostile party against other people on this planet to a table to stop.
What a stupid argument. They love it. What's funny is half these conversations, the U.S. government is not even actually involved. They're just saying things on media and acting like they influence the outcome. Typical hubris by this administration. Or how about Ukraine or Israel and Gaza? What's the actual material change? Nothing. The war has never stopped or even barely slowed down, but he sure got him to the table. These are meaningless talking points. What is the actual outcome? Which is what I told you in the beginning. Don't look at words, look at precedent and look at outcome. If you look at only those two things, what do we see? The war has never stopped. They've only gotten worse. What do we tell you?
Now, that's the simple part. Making things happen and making it last is another thing. Hamas, we did have a ceasefire. And then Hamas decided once again that was just not going to do, and they continue to do what they do.
So you think she's that stupid, or do you think she's lying? You can decide. But before we keep playing, I will show you this. This is what Jeremy Scahill pointed out 2 days ago. This is a recurring pattern. Hamas accepts the terms of the deal that is based on what the U.S. says is necessary. We saw that with Blinken like 7 times in a row. We've seen it at least 3 or 4 now with Trump. Israel then issues new demands, usually after Hamas accepts the one they said only Hamas accepts and will be over. They do. Then Israel issues some new demand or claims it's not sufficient after the fact. The U.S. then gives cover to Israel to blow up the deal and joins in blaming Hamas. Happened under Biden too. This is my point. It's like, do we really need to pretend? Does anybody not know that? It's embarrassingly obvious. You're either paying attention and either denying it because of partisanship, or you know it, or you're only paying attention to what idiots online say and you have no idea what you're talking about. As far as I could tell, that's the only real things happen. There's no way to misunderstand this. You can't keep saying, all we have to do is get Hamas to say yes, and it'll all be over. And then they do, and then they go, well, it's Biden, it's still their fault. That happens so many times. That's why Blinken was clearly the one that was being played there. He was the person being the stand-in, and he looked dumb every single time. Well, now the same thing keeps happening with Trump and the rest. The difference is Trump has promised them the world and keeps delivering. You can do what you want. Break the deal, take the West Bank, kill everybody you want. We'll blindly support you.
That, first of all, again, regarding the particular issues over the last few days, we call on all parties to this conflict to take every feasible measure to mitigate civilian harm. We refer you to Israel for more information on its airstrikes.
Right. So she's skimming over the bombing of innocent children, the burning child in a building, the children killed as the doctors. You can ask them for those things that we don't care about. But Hamas did it.
And we also know, as we all do, and this is one of the things that we've discovered time and time again, that Hamas uses hospitals and other humanitarian areas as human shields. This is
not a single example from the moment October 7th forward. Not a single example has been proven. They've lied about it probably 45 times and been disproven even by the corporate media. And I don't mean some subjective side thing. I mean, breaking down like the last one I just saw where they said this was the tunnel. Nope, that turned out to be the wrong building and turned out to be something they could prove wasn't even there. And I'm talking like the people on the ground, the corporate media, human rights groups. It's embarrassing. And I think they know. They know that it's that clear, so they just lie and know you'll see it and hope that their screaming idiots out there will be enough to carry it forward. Some cases it is. But can you believe that she's still saying that? On the other side of it, every single hospital has been targeted. Almost all of them have been destroyed by Israel. They're using most of them as bases at this point, and you can prove that. But I guess that doesn't matter because it's only a one-sided conversation. Again, it's either that you are willing to be honest about this or you're blindly lying for Zionism. And I think a lot of people on the side of awareness are just too afraid to step into it.
Why we continue to try to get a ceasefire done, despite the obstacles that Hamas constantly presents. It is apparently their hope that we would just give up and go away, or that the usual status quo would continue.
Or you mean offer a complete ceasefire for all exchange of all the hostages and two-state solution, exactly what you've always pretended you wanted, and nobody allowed that? You guys push back on it. I mean, it's insane how you can stand there with a straight face and literally say they're the only one that stopped the thing that they accepted that you've always pretended you wanted. Or Netanyahu or the Israeli government saying that we always want a two-state solution. And then you can quite literally prove that they funded Hamas to stop that from happening. All of this is public information. And we are dealing with very, very, very dishonest, dangerous people. I'm talking about our government and whoever controls them. These are disgusting, vile people who know what they're lying about and simply don't care. That's not the whole country. In fact, I find it to be a minority, but the majority of people that find their way into these positions are on that team. That we can change.
But President Trump is not that person. He's a person who gets it done. After decades of conflict, I understand you're frustrated after maybe 3 months of it not being perfect yet. But that is what we are going for.
Please tell me. Listen to that again.
He's a person who gets it done. After decades of conflict, I understand you're frustrated after maybe 3 months of it not being perfect yet. But that is what we are going for.
I understand you're frustrated because it's not. Are you serious? Now you're patronizing him, acting like he's rushing you to solve the problem. God! Like this is the kind of thing that I need to back. This makes my blood boil. I mean, seriously, like I want to go punch a hole in the wall when you see somebody like that. Like Prem Thacker is being too pushy about solving the genocide. I know it's been 3. I know you want to rush and get this all finished, like he's being a child or something. I mean, there's something especially dark and disgusting about someone who can do something like that, or who drives them to do it. Here's another example. Dropsite News points out State Department blames Hamas after Israel shoots starving Palestinians. I'm sure you won't be shocked what she says here.
Approximately 8,000 food boxes have been distributed so far. Each box feeds 5.5 people for 3.5 days, totaling 462,000.
Guys, you can look at these boxes. Your eyes will tell you that's a stupid thing to say. On top of that, recognizing that that many boxes for the amount of people they have with what we already know and already in a famine position, it's insulting. As anybody with knowledge is telling you it's a drop in the ocean, and they turn around and go, what else do you need us to do? We're doing everything, as they murder these people in front of you.
1,000 meals. And so those are the kinds of numbers I think as we're looking at what's important in moving that kind of aid through the area.
Right, but there was apparently some incidents today involving potentially shots being, or at least warning shots being fired, and hundreds.
Well, yes, Hamas still has weapons. Hamas is in a situation here where all of this could have stopped, of course, if they.
Okay, I want to play it again. Before I want it, because I let it go, it's going to pull. What she just said right there is astounding. So nobody's disagreeing with the fact that shots were fired by Israel. They claim it was because they're people being rushed and they're in danger, or specifically the U.S. mercenaries working with Israel. Same conversation. So we know that because they already gave you an argument for why they had to do that. But Miss Tammy Bruce here, because she's so desperately blindly supporting one side, just regurgitates with no evidence. Well, Hamas is still, yeah, they've got weapons. Like in this weird blithe response, like almost like you're joking about it. Well, whether Hamas has weapons or not has no bearing on the fact that we know for a fact that that's not what just happened there. But, and even as she goes forward, you recognize, I think I can see that she recognizes that kind of failure. Just watch what I mean by that. But just acknowledge her marching orders are to deflect to Israel, or away from Israel, to Hamas, no matter what the facts are. Sort of like Mr. Vampire Matt Miller from before, who said they're probably being raped over there. And that shot himself in the foot big time, because he walked it back immediately, but he did that because subjectively erring on the side of the people you're supporting. That's not facts. That's propaganda. So what she said, it kills me.
Fired and
so shots fired on the ground, which we know was Israel and the U.S. mercenaries that are working together to help these people and otherwise starve them and pretend they're helping them.
Well, yes, Hamas still has weapons. Hamas is in a situation here where all of this could have stopped, of course, if they had released the hostages and put down their weapons. But
nope. No, Tammy, you're wrong. In fact, I think I shouldn't say that. Frankly, I don't think you're that bright. And I'm not saying that just to be dismissive of these people. I mean that. I don't think these people in positions of power right now are even remotely as smart as they like to present. But what you're saying is absolutely, without question, wrong. And you could prove it because they keep telling you that. And Caitlin Johnstone just ripped this apart. Anyone still saying, return hostages, end the war, is either dumb or is manipulating for Zionism, because they will not stop telling you that even if we get them back, we will not stop until Hamas is disarmed, that they are removed, and that we take control of the area. So she's lying to you. To argue all they do is let their weapons down and it would all be over. No, they would still do exactly what they're currently doing. They've told you that repeatedly. So it wouldn't surprise me that she's just completely stupid and uninformed. But frankly, I think it's because she's propagandizing you for Israel.
In a situation
fired and
well, yes, Hamas still has weapons. Hamas is in a situation here where all of this could have stopped, of course, if they had released the hostages and put down their weapons. But they were. Oh,
and then don't forget, they offered that, 15 times now, being facetious, at least twice, October 9th and 10th. They offered a full exchange for all hostages if they stopped the war. Israel said, no, absolutely not. Hamas is secondary. I've shown you that 100 times over. And then many times after that, many times, in fact, recently, the last one, phase 2, was the complete end, complete release, end of the war, and they stopped it. The only entity standing in the way of actually ending this is Israel. If you're not aware of that, then you are either being misled or not able to discern the facts. They'll tell you that. So, understand what I'm saying. You can literally listen to Israeli politicians lay it all out for you, and then come over here and listen to Tammy Bruce tell you the exact opposite. I'm pretty sure we can trust what the Israeli government says they're doing versus what Tammy Bruce wants you to think they're doing.
Refused to do so. They've also rejected ceasefires. So that's without confirming what might be gossip or single reports. The fact of the matter is Hamas has been opposed to this dynamic.
Nope.
They have attempted to stop
Nope.
the aid movement through Gaza to these distribution centers. They
Provably false. Even the World Food Program just literally reported publicly that that's not the case. We have no evidence, and everyone involved has made this case. You can literally prove that they're stopping the aid, and yet you can't prove even for a moment that what she's claiming. But don't forget the first point. Well, Hamas has weapons too, and then follows up by going, well, I don't want to respond to the hypothetical. So you respond to his point by saying Hamas has weapons, but then end by saying we don't even know if that's true or not. See my point? So the direction from this fact-based report is to blindly assume in the direction of your enemy, no matter what, all the time, propaganda.
Failed, but they certainly tried. The bottom of these distribution centers, they have failed, but they certainly tried. The bottom line is, the real story here is that the aid is moving through, and in that kind of an environment, it's not surprising that there might be a few issues involved, but
can I just point out how disgusting it is, her little smirk when she says that? Oh, you mean a few issues like genocide and murdering of innocent people starving with their families? Yeah, a couple little snafus. Guys, people are gross.
There might be a few issues involved, but the good news is that those seeking to get aid to the people of Gaza, which is not Hamas, have succeeded.
And last one, really brief.
Flatly false. I mean, that's the most embarrassing part. That's not true. They're still starving.
I won't take up any more time, but my understanding is that the administration is not particularly happy with the position that the UN and its agencies have taken with.
Yeah, which is this is all a big show and it's not actually helping and they're lying and they're stopping food, like literally what everyone can prove. So the point is the Trump administration's angry that the UN is calling out their facade.
Regard to these shipments. Is that correct?
Well, it is. From the very beginning, I'd mentioned and we had heard about the resistance by certain NGOs and the UN.
Yeah, get there.
It is unfortunate because the issue here is getting aid to Gazans.
Yeah, what they've all been trying to do endlessly, and that you've actively been stopping at every possible turn. Like even right now. I mean, we'll show you the clips in a second.
And then suddenly it moves into complaints about style or the nature of who's doing it. Or
see my point? Style? You mean the shooting of people waiting in line for food? You mean the deliberate use of the wrong things like death shrouds instead of food that they could use that you throw in the corner? Yeah, these aren't functional issues. This is deliberate tactics meant to starve these people while pretending that you're feeding them. The worst of the worst of the worst. Right there in front of you.
Elements of administration and being opposed to getting food and aid, as we've demonstrated here, is happening and will continue to happen.
You mean like the peer that you made the exact same arguments for that ended up delivering a few pallets that barely even got to anybody, or also carried out an operation where you killed people in beds in hospitals and then dismantled it, went away. But despite all of the massive money and effort and conversations that people like you had telling us that it was going to save everybody and that they were trying to resist it because, no, they resisted it because we all saw through it. Just like right now. But again, you think they're going to admit that? Guys, they will never stop saying the thing that they want you to think is the case. Like we said, like Andreessen and Karp and the rest will tell you, you just double down and you lie. That's what they do.
Because someone might feel left out is, I think, the height of hypocrisy.
God. So the argument, though, so now you're making it about somebody wanting to be involved. God, like it just gives my skin crawl. Because, I mean, frankly, I think you know that she knows what's happening. And your argument is to try to make it seem like they're being petty. They just want to be involved with what's happening. No. They're calling out you still murdering people in real time. And that's the best you can do.
The bottom line is that clearly people who care about the nature of solving this problem are taking action and moving it forward. And that's what counts. That's what matters. Yes, Andrea. Yes, ma'am.
It's just absolutely disgusting. Now, to prove that she's lying, as usual, let's go through a couple more points here. Well, just as Patrick Henningsen points out, and this is, look at these people. You want to break down for me how this is a functioning aid distribution dynamic, but it goes, this is Patrick Henningsen, dear Donald Trump, this is your legacy right here. Concentration camps and a genocide. The backlash will tarnish your brand for generations. Concentration camp. Humiliating people starved for 86 days. Shame on this world. Wild. And of course, in case you didn't see this, here's Netanyahu yesterday. Comes out and says, there's no famine in Gaza because we detained thousands of civilians, these are his words, and photographed them naked because that's totally acceptable, right? And there were no signs of hunger on them. In fact, they just don't do sports exercises. I swear to you, that's what he said. He literally said, no, they're not starving. They just don't have muscle. They're just not they're not athletic. But let's move past the fact that they detained a bunch of civilians and made them get naked and took pictures of them. But that's no big deal because we were trying to prove that you were lying, right? Guys, these people are absolutely outside their minds. That's insane to me. And I said, all right, they just posted what he said. They just don't do sports exercises. I said, how did these clownish monsters ever gain control of the narrative in the past? It baffles me. And here's the IPC report from 5 months ago. 1.1 million people, half of Gaza, catastrophic food insecurity. That is the IPC. That is the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification. That is the place you go to find these things out. There's Smotrich saying, we are being blessed, he says, with the opportunity, thank God, of seeing an expansion of the borders of the land of Israel. You know, ethnic cleansing. Calling it colonialization. I mean, it's amazing to me that this is the point that always frustrates people like us, is that this guy and Kavir and even Netanyahu have been publicly telling you this for so long, and yet we can't have an honest conversation about this. This is Greater Israel, right? This is expansionism. This is taking Syria, Lebanon, everywhere, guys. They're taking people's territory, and the U.S. government is paying for it. You're paying for it. He says, seeing an expansion of the borders of Israel on all fronts, he says. Yep, exactly. Right now, there's not one front of Israel that's not currently expanding. We are being blessed, he says, with the opportunity to blot out the seed of Amalek. So murdering every Palestinian is what that means. A process which is intensifying. Proudly telling you this. Last point before I finish with a clip that'll probably choke you up. This is a tweet that went out showing these are Senegalese, as I say it, Senegalese from some Senegal students, expelled the Israeli ambassador from the campus in a university in Dakar, where he had come to attend a conference on international relations. They chanted, murderer, criminal, free Palestine. You can literally watch. They chased him out. He had to run away. And this is a large reason why this whole effort to make it, it's basically, they're creating a racial divide right now, very clearly. And it's not because you're not white, you're good, and vice versa. It's never like that. There are people on all sides of every racial divide that are disgusting, immoral, genocidal people, and vice versa. There are people on all sides that are good, people on all sides. That's the reality. The point, though, is they really are trying to drive in this wedge, because I think right now what you're seeing is that most of the world is very aware of what's actually happening. And the best they can do is try to divide you on classic division tactics. Race, politician, or politics, anything, religion. So my point, just a thought. First of all, I just wanted you to see that. The people around the world are not standing up, or are not taking anymore. They are standing up. But if history is any guide, with what we've seen with South Africa and the ICJ and just about everything else, if history is any guide, we can now expect Israel to falsely manufacture one of three things in Senegal. Either a humanitarian crisis, in quotes, an immigration dilemma, or an anti-Semitism issue. And of course, the America First U.S. government will scramble to make it priority number one. We'll see what happens. Now, my point is not that I'm saying we know that's going to happen right now. It's just as likely that Israel's overburdened with, stretched too thin. My point is simply that historically, first, recognize that that's what this government does. They will go after maliciously anybody that simply calls them for what they are. I mean, crimes, not some kind of racial point. You're committing a crime. And what you notice from the Trump administration, or rather the current U.S. government, is the same thing. Irrational, childish responses about just people that call you out for what we all know you're doing. And I'll leave you with this. As David Icke said, I am banned from 30 European countries and Australia for anti-Semitism. And which is not what it's really about, and have had events canceled all over the world for publicly calling out, since 1995, the grotesque evil that the Israeli government, that all the world can now see. I agree. It's not anti-Semitism at all. It's called basic humanity. And do not try to conflate that with him saying He's not even remote referring to anti-Semitism. He's saying that you're calling his basic humanity anti-Semitism to hide what you're calling out. In no way is he saying anything about Jewish people. He's talking about Zionism, most importantly, and what they're doing to the world, and anyone that supports them. And he says, but that's a crime today, right, Mr. Trump? Calling this out? RTR World, Palestinian ambassador. Jeez, I hate the way Twitter works, right? Twitter's so ridiculous. So tell me how that works. I click on this tweet. Look what it takes me. Was that happen to you? That doesn't seem right. Pretty sure that happens to me or certain people that do what I'm doing. And I have to, oh, there it is. Find the one in the middle. Palestinian ambassador to the United Nations breaks down in tears as he tells Security Council that what is unfolding in Gaza and is human tragedy deliberately caused by Israel. Now, really, it's powerful to see somebody in this position, right? Somebody that it's like seeing the doctors break down. To see somebody that's been doing this their entire life, to see them affected by this. Now, look, regardless of what you think about where he comes from and what his background is or who he supports, realize that what he's discussing, at least as far as I can prove, is what's going on, a genocide. They are murdering people. They are laughing about it. They're posting videos of it. They're talking about it openly. And yet your politicians and your government, the whole point of today, clearly influenced or bought off, are lying to you about it in profoundly obvious ways. So just hopefully this will impact somebody to recognize that they're really trying to frame anybody who is trying to call this out as somehow the other, the evil villain supporting Hamas. And in reality, as you're going to see in this clip, he's just a man with kids that sees what's going on and has a hard time even having an open conversation about it anymore because it is just beyond what any normal human being is supposed to endure. So thank you for tuning in today. Please find the courage to stand up for this because they, Palestinians, and like a lot of other people, need us out here to call these things out, to reach new people. Who knows what momentum, what one more person could do, what one more voice could do to the momentum that could cascade everything into the direction we want. We just don't know. That's why all we can do is act for ourselves. We can stand up for what we believe in. We can see what we think and try to help other people see what we think is correct. Momentum is already there. The world is there. We see it. Please do not slow down. Keep calling this stuff out, helping people see it, give the information, show them the show, give them the source material. People are thirsty for it, guys. I really do feel that we're on the precipice of something, and it very well could go in the wrong direction. And that's why we need to be as vigilant as ever. Thank you for tuning in today. I love you all. As always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
Children are dying of starvation. The images of mothers embracing their motionless bodies, caressing their hair, talking to them, apologizing to them. This is unbearable. How could anyone tolerate this horror? Excuse me, Mr. President. I have grandchildren. I know what they mean to their families. And to see this situation of the Palestinians without us having hearts to do something is beyond the ability of any normal human being to tolerate.
Канал завжди на
Muslim.